We are back. I got my perfect dark t-shirt on for this recording. Skipping the preamble today so we can dive right in. I'm Randall Petrus. Next to me are my secret agent compadres, comrades, allies. I don't know.
Technically, in terms
Comrades
of life and also this podcast, I'm kind of the Q of the whole thing.
All right.
So
Is that it? Does that make me Moneypenny?
no, you're
Am I M? You know what?
you are Judi Dench. I've always said that.
You know what? I'm a Felix Leiter. Okay, not always there, but always welcome.
Oh no, you're a Bill Tanner actually.
You know what? I actually, you know what? I'll take that. I'm a Bill Tanner guy.
I'll be a Robinson.
One of
I don't know what any of these mean.
Bill Tanner is just like I don't even think they say his name.
He's like the tech analyst.
He's like the secretary. He's like the assistant dude. He's just around MI6 sometimes.
I'm like the American Q.
Yeah, the engineer.
Yeah.
The American Q was the R, wasn't it?
No, that was John Cleese.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't.
I'm thinking of the new. No, he was
John Cleese. It was like
all I can think of is Chloe from 24. If anybody watched 24,
I played the video game.
No, I didn't.
She's in that as well.
Speaking of, so that is Austin Blakesley and Matt Nudeboom. This is Hot Button. We are in Act 2 of our GoldenEye 007 saga, here to tell you all about the story of how one of gaming's beloved classics came to be, from the early days of Rare to the fumbled re-releases. Where we last left off, development was hard in progress. I believe they just completed the performance capture shoots, beating the shit out of poor Duncan.
Yeah. That's where we ended? That's a good note to end on.
Yeah.
I like that ending.
So with that, let's step back a little and sort of analyze where FPSs were as a genre in 95, 96, 97, and their relationship with the distributor. Nintendo's only comparable dip into the concept really was back in the 70s with their laser clay gun cabinets and arcades. Doesn't Smash Trophy have one of the wild gun?
I'm sure it does.
Since then, you had Battlezone to, of course, the works of id Software, Wolfenstein, Doom, and the then-in-production Quake. The term first-person shooter had yet to be coined, while Doom, often called the forefather of the label, was reigning supreme throughout the gamosphere. GoldenEye was wearing its influences on its sleeves there, borrowing ideas like having specific ammo for its arsenal of weapons, body armor, explosive barrels, mission stats, but this was still a separate beast. There wasn't much in those titles in way of narrative, plus their presentation of 3D was sprite-based. The illusion of depth was novel, but by here we had the N64's, quote, reality coprocessor at their disposal. This aside, Super FX chip.
Yeah.
FPSs were also attached at the hip to the personal computer. Sure, ports of id's releases did make their journey to home platforms, though this was being formulated from the ground up. They had a buttload of convincing to do to turn heads. John Romero, on many occasions in Elisa's interview, reiterates GoldenEye's importance to even where the future of PC games would go. It was smart to keep the levels bite-sized as to not overwhelm less savvy players, a notion that behooves replayability.
You reminded me, when you were talking about the reality coprocessor,
Yeah.
I miss when chips had stupid names.
Yeah, right?
Because like now, what chip is in the PlayStation 5? It's just an AMD RDNA 3
Yeah, that's no fun.
APU. And I was looking at videos of the PS3 being taken apart because I have to
The cell? Power the cell.
Well, yes, the cell. But do you remember what the GPU on the PS3 was called? Because it wasn't just a GPU.
No.
It was called the RSX chip, which stands for Reality Synthesizer Extreme.
Yeah.
Wait, what console was this?
PS3.
Oh, okay. Wow,
Everything surrounding the PS3 was fucking
That's actually what I was about
bananas,
to say. I thought I was like, wait, the PlayStation 1? Yeah, I thought Reality Simulation Extreme on that. But yeah, also it's like everything about that was just like the cell processor, this RSX thing.
Yeah, and then they switched to X64.
Yeah,
and everything became boring, just as Intel intended.
Yeah.
They also switched away from that batarang controllers. Now we don't get anything funky in that department.
Were those
either.
redesigned before the release? Is there a prototype? Okay, I was like,
the prototypes are probably out there.
There's got to be prototypes.
Yeah.
I mean, we all made
and
fun
they
of
made the worst controller.
The 6-axis blows.
One of the worst controllers that anybody has ever made.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Back to the Nintendo 64.
So elsewhere, Nintendo started to broadcast their promotional
I just
campaigns.
got that joke.
Their promotional campaigns for it, leaning hard into the "You Are Bond" angle, all while harnessing the power of the N64. This motif then led to the Rare devs spending many lunch breaks rewatching the film in short bursts for further inspiration. It helps that they've been fans since their youth, appreciating the franchise, its wry brand of campy humor. They soon modified the opening clips of each mission so that the camera would pan around and zoom into the back of a 007's like rectangular dome.
Yep. To emphasize like you are role-playing Bond.
Yeah,
here.
it's cool. Even a multiplayer does it.
Yep.
The signature red ooze pouring down when you're killed was implemented. They always wanted the HUD clear of distractions, although it was Doak who suggested adding the crosshair aimer on screen for precision control. Stealth was also new for the genre, with silenced firearms and the judo slap chopping to take out enemies undetected. What?
Was that the first shooter with a crosshair? No, right?
Oh.
Because Doom didn't have one. Quake did. Quake
that was
technically
96,
came out first. So yeah. Doom and Wolfenstein didn't.
No, you're right.
Trying to think. Rise of the Triad didn't.
No.
That was just a Wolfenstein mod that got renamed.
None of them had silencers.
Shadow Warrior didn't.
Shadow Warrior.
Duke Nukem didn't.
No, Duke Nukem did not. The features then kept coming. The ability to shoot through glass, break lights, the elimination of alarms and cameras. On the creative side of things, a strain to maintain atmosphere was heavily prioritized. Effects like smoke and steam were included, skyboxes, shell casings flying out. It felt real in the sense where its competitors lacked. Addy Smith, who was the person to thank for much of these, in fact, he was one of the few who had the cachet from his time spent on Donkey Kong Country 2, along with his years at college where he focused on product packaging and design, attending
Burning Man.
in their master program before Hilton and Jones did, as he was slightly older than the rest of the group. He also called making the jump from pen and paper to mouse and keyboard as a tough transition, though scored his degree anyway, and was approached by 5 other gaming companies until choosing Rare in 1992 to work as a graphic artist. His contributions are littered throughout GoldenEye, the doors, the vehicles, almost every weapon, even the opening credit sequence and health displays, one that he wished he trademarked.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Which they did bring back in Time Splitters 2 and 3.
And 3,
Is it in 1?
I don't remember.
I don't either.
No, I think it's just a health bar at the top of the screen.
Yeah.
I played that with you not even a couple years ago, and I still don't remember.
Time Splitters 1 is pretty unremarkable.
Yeah.
It's very proof of concept.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
It feels more like a tech demo than anything
We're going to
else.
get to it in the next episode, but it totally is that. And you'll see, like, it makes sense too, considering the length of development they had.
I mean,
2 was where it truly began.
I think probably what, like, the thing that we did not explore, and maybe I should say this earlier, but we did just the campaigns and we didn't explore the multiplayer, which I would say is like, that's like, you know, half or more of like where the big content in that game is. It's like the campaign in that game was like, what? We got through it in like 2.5 hours. It's like, I think the
campaign wasn't really emphasized until 3, but the multiplayers were always beefy.
I was gonna say, it's just like we probably played the part of the game that nobody else played. I'm fairly sure people probably
yeah,
people played it for the multiplayer, not for the campaign.
Well, that's what I did with GoldenEye.
Yeah, but
at the time,
you know,
but the campaign in GoldenEye is robust enough on its own.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know. I'm not saying anything. I'm not trying to compare the two
I get
in
what you're
terms
saying.
of quality. I'm just saying I bought GoldenEye to play multiplayer.
Well, now I know what we're doing tomorrow when everybody comes over. So he then went on to create the shadows, the tracer fire, explosions, muzzle flashes, glass shattering, bullet holes, and the blood. The bulk of which would hereby assist users by presenting where the danger was. Same with how nearly every single object could explode. Tables? Yup. Chairs? You bet. Monitors? Absolutely. Quote, everything explodes in films, says Bollywood.
you know what's funny? And it's like that actually, in the movies, everything explodes. So why not would everything explode? It's like when you think about like shooting a monitor.
We were discussing this of like that was so normalized to us in that game, and you look back and you're like, that was fucking like what?
Well, look at what do you call it? It's like in movies, if you get like a little bit of water on a computer, it just explodes for some reason. It's like same thing. It's like if you shoot a monitor in real life, you're gonna have 2 bullet holes in your monitor, and it's just not gonna turn on.
No, I've seen Final Destination 1. They blow up.
Thank you. That was the exact example I was thinking. It's like everything. So it's like when you shot something like a TV, it's like, of course, it's gonna blow up, and then they just extended it to tables and chairs, and so fuck it, why not?
So this aligns with Hollis's definition of realism, quote unquote, more meant interactivity, not literal realism. That's why Bond had capabilities that the soldiers didn't. They'd be subjected to wackier fates. Them flying away from slow-ass explosions wasn't a bug. It was a benefit. And it was hilarious. The delay on it.
He explains exactly why that happens. The explosion happens and they fly away.
Yeah.
I just think it was just funny that it's like, we thought it was hilarious.
Fuck it,
leave it in.
Yeah. Elise often recites in her book about how GoldenEye's comedy doesn't receive the praise it so deserves. Its quirks and gags being vital to its intended goals. Upon boot up, I know you were talking to me about this, Matt. The first splash screen you are shown is a straight parody of the British Board of Film Certification card.
Yeah. I didn't even know until I read it in the book.
Same.
Because it shows up and you think it's like a company copyright card, and but then and it's on the screen for like maybe a second.
Yeah, the thing that's is like it has like the age.
Yes,
thing.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the word British is replaced with Twycross, the location of Rare's headquarters.
Yeah.
And instead the phrase suitable only for persons 12 years and older is changed to, what is it? It's suitable only for 1 to 4 persons.
Yeah.
A cute in-joke that few living outside the UK would understand.
That's also a thing.
Let alone like children.
You just assume it's like, you assume it's some legal notice card and you don't read it, and then you actually do read it and you're like, oh.
I can't believe I've been staring at that for like over 2 decades. And
one of the signatures is just James Bond. It's
yes,
just like, yeah.
It's better than whatever the MPAA is doing. We'll
Yeah.
say that much.
Further instances to avoid the tone becoming too grim was the smattering of cheat codes you can unlock. A fucking gauntlet to obtain them all. Me and you did it, buddy.
Yeah.
1,000 point gamer score. But this was where our team could really get playful. Same with the local multiplayer that we'll examine in a bit. Paintball, DK mode, slappers only, the mines. Except even in the campaign, these tonal shifts could bleed through. Each mission had pages of written briefings, complete with Moneypenny's flirtations and Q's belittling of James's uncaring use of his gadgets.
By the way, the Moneypenny briefings, okay, it's like they are always flirtatious and apparently filled with a lot of British innuendo that I was not aware of.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, I think it's on one of the missions with a helicopter, maybe frigate or like whatever. She just goes, be careful with that chopper, James. Chopper is British slang for a dick.
Is it really?
Yes. And I was like, it's the same thing. It's like, and I know I've brought up this tale before, but grabbed by the ghoulies are balls.
Yeah.
And it's like,
man, that is like Rare's like MO.
Really, and it's just like, listen, it's like, I know you published this shit in the UK. They must have seen the evidence.
Hey, look at what Ratchet and Clank does here. You know, up your arsenal.
Yeah.
It's
Going commando.
Yeah.
And this doesn't take account of all the meta layers either. Like Doak recounted that the DD-44 Dostoevsky. I never knew how to pronounce that.
Dostoevsky.
the Dostoevsky. I think
It's
is
a reference to
Dostoevsky.
Double D Bros.
Oh yeah,
I
that's
yawned,
right.
but that was supposed to be a joke.
What?
I said Dostoevsky.
So everything was to have a personality, weapons included. Each to have their own unique appearance, soundbite, rate of fire and damage, spread, such as with shotties, and reload speed. Originally, they wanted them to stay true to their real-world counterparts as possible. I stated in the previous episode how prior shooters had primarily focused, they were like more centered on like a fantastical setting. Never before was anyone constructing like an AK-47 in a game.
Yo.
Yeah, Wolfenstein had real guns.
Yeah, well, those were World War II guns.
True.
Those things were They were crazy.
When Shayna was watching us play it and we're doing facility with the AK, she's like, "It looks like you're shooting a Duracell battery."
No,
Yeah.
it's a pencil.
The pencil gun, yeah.
So, however, this was eventually dialed back when it was found that nobody in the crew had any personal experience with guns. They took most of their information from a firearms textbook and Michael Mann's Heat. Dope. Also John Woo movies, which is how wielding akimbo found its way in. Since the artists were so limited on polygons, the models were fairly low res. Reloading was done out of frame. The first-person sway, although that was nice.
Yeah.
Slowly rocking with Bond's breathing and pulse. His muscles tensing up when peering through a scope. It made things feel less robotic. And the visuals in front of you likely kept audiences' eyes on other places as well.
There is to interject. There is that one YouTube channel you showed me. He does comparisons of video game guns to real life.
Yes,
guns.
I'm going to bring him up.
I was going to say the one thing
with
with the weapons with personality. He points out in the game, a lot of guns have these chrome or nickel finishes.
Yeah.
It's like that doesn't happen. You know, these guns have no finish like that in real life. But it's like it sure
like
does,
just for aesthetic reasons.
It
like
just
this
looks cool.
It does. Yeah.
It
No,
just
that
looks
was
cool.
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, he's like, hey, there's no variant of this, but
it's like
the
if you
shape is.
he's like, well, if you put a nickel or chrome finish on it, it would look. This is exactly it. So
they did a lot with what they had.
Yeah.
For the meleeing, the karate chop I brought up was the result of it being easier to render than a punching fist. Even with the restrictions, the team managed to squeeze in quite the assortment. Knives, pistols, machine guns, shotguns, grenade and rocket launchers, the Moonraker laser and golden gun, artifacts plucked right from the series' past. Names were rewritten to circumvent legal issues, but this was a better fit for the game's style. Doom was where the developers would look for balancing. Attributes like magazine size were adjusted, what guns were able to pierce armor. The sniper rifle by a mile remains the most revolutionary. It almost didn't make it into the final build until Smith nagged Hollis and Edmonds to do it. Every good spy is well trained in using a sniper, and its inclusion took 2 weeks to finalize alone.
By the way, we forgot another British slang: slappers only.
Yes, that's right.
It's all over the place in that
totally
game.
is.
Yeah, they really love doing that, and I am playing through Fable 2 right now, and it's funny because it's not rare, but it's a British developer.
Oh, that game is so British.
It's so funny that all these British companies, they love like silly humor and sneaking in innuendo and all this stuff.
Yeah, there's so many like dick and ball and boob terminology.
I'm not mixing. Yeah, Fable 2 is a UK company, right?
Lionhead.
Yes, Lionhead. Which okay.
Peter Molyneux.
Peter Molyneux.
Our boy.
Okay, I'm not going. He's very French, right?
No, he's British.
Yeah.
What?
Because he's got that like Aronofsky last name,
and also the last name. Yeah,
We did an episode about him. He was gonna sell beans, and then they accidentally set him computers, so he made Populous.
Mm-hmm. And the rest is history.
And the rest is history.
You did that episode?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's like the
third
episode.
The What's Inside the Cube.
Yeah, Curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, I listened to that episode and I forgot that, dude. I gotta go re-listen.
Don't worry,
to it.
there's more of Peter in store.
Oh yeah.
So on the opposite end of the elegant spectrum with the sniper, you had the Klob, a notoriously terrible machine pistol and fan favorite for that reason. It was loud, weak, inaccurate, had a tiny clip. The best you could do was spray it all over the place and hope a couple shots landed.
Which is also deeply, that was the other thing I wanted to bring up.
Shots that equate to lesser damage than the signature slap.
It's a half a slap. So that was the other thing the weapon channel pointed out. That is also ironically one of the weapons that you can wield akimbo.
Yeah.
Okay, and not wielding any gun akimbo is one of the worst. It's like if you only wield akimbo if you want to look cool and hit nothing.
But he said it was like that one is like the least impractical.
Which is
because it's so lightweight.
Because it's so lightweight, but it's funny that it's like the Klob is the most inaccurate gun in the game, and you're wielding it in the most inaccurate way possible as well. And it's like, it was
any level that it's in. There's always two.
Yeah.
For a moment, they wanted to throw in an even worse version of it.
Jeez.
But they soon rescinded. The normal Klob was funny enough.
you can't. It's like it's still useful in the game if you're close up and just spray them.
Yeah.
If you make it so bad, people are just gonna never want to pick it up. So
it's good. It's good for multiplayer because like multiplayer has that friction where when you get shot, you go flying backwards. So
Yeah.
everybody's just pushing each other.
Dude, the stun lock and the push were like, it's awful.
Of course, we can't speak on the club without retelling the tale of its name.
Of course. This is why I was like, you got to tell this story.
Yeah. As I said, Rare was not interested in fighting it out with gun manufacturers. The AK became the KF-7 Soviet, the Walther PPK became the PP-7, and the Scorpion became the Spider. Spider with a Y.
Yeah, which was also a copyrighted gun, I think, right?
Yeah, well, if you guys recall, and I know I do, there was a line of paintball autocockers in the 90s and 2000s called the Spider.
There was the Titman, and then, but I was like, remember I wanted to try it out, and it's like, the Spider was like, kind of like, it was cheaper, but it was like, it was
that chrome, like,
and it's like, it wasn't as good as a Titman, but it's like, it was a good, like, if you were on a budget. I do remember the Spider.
Yeah.
I never.
wonder if they still make those.
I never wound up buying that paintball gun. It was, you know why? Because paintball guns are like $200, and I just didn't have it.
That's the thing. It's like it's just easier. It's to rent now. Like it's.
I thought the Scorpion was the club.
It was.
You said the Scorpion was the Spider.
No, in real life, it's called the Scorpion. In the game, it was initially called the Spider.
Yeah.
But then so the law department phoned up the studio to request another change.
Because of the paintball company?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's where
precisely.
you were going with that. Okay.
Unfortunately, Nintendo had already printed 800,000 instruction manuals with the second rename, except that was entirely forgotten after this solution. So the team was told that whatever they chose would need to pass a worldwide trademark search. Rare didn't have time to conduct that, so they went with a special nod to their Nintendo of America buddy, Mr. Ken Lobb, and thus the Club was born.
Mm-hmm.
This was guaranteed to have not been taken. So who was Ken Lobb? Essentially, he was the liaison between Rareware and the Mighty Mario publisher who was funding the project. During the last 9 months of development, Ken was dubbed their champion by Botwood, supportive and enthusiastic. Quote, "We did him a huge disservice labeling the loudest, most inaccurate weapon after him." Hollis later expressed a similar regret and apologized. Lobb, though, was thrilled, honored, even pointing out that it was the best gun if you set the rules to one-hit kills.
Of course, the caveat. No, it's like, yeah, of course. It's I think it. Yeah, I do remember that. There's like we feel bad, and Ken is like, yeah, this is great. I love it. So
Yeah.
no, everyone it kills. Jesus.
Now, before we move on, there was another check-in from the Big N who showed concern in featuring a particular type of weapon, knives. Already not super Bond per se, so they were quietly removed, only the hunting variant, from the Japanese release.
Yeah.
Likely in response to a tragic murder in the country involving a knife.
It is, if you really think about it, killing someone with a hunting knife is pretty visceral.
That's a lot more brutal.
It's
than,
brutal, yeah,
A hunting knife, even, it's just a visceral. Like, so the facts they had gotten stated that it was offensive as it portrayed, quote, too much murder in the close distance. The guys adhered to the cut, but laughed about the phrasing since it meant that the throwable knives were okay. Just not the stabby ones.
Not the stabby ones, yeah. No, the throwing knives is
They're
more...
fucking hysterical. I love that sound. Ding, ding, ding. It's just like, and you just hear like, like,
also,
and they bounce off the walls. It's great.
This is where if we were a video podcast, I would edit in footage of The Last of Us Part 2 when you get the knife in that game.
Oh,
You want to see fucking brutal.
Yeah, we'll see exactly. And also it's like throwing knives are like more like classic assassin sort of way.
Yeah,
it's like it feels more assassin like.
People aren't really fucking knives around like they used to.
It is, but it's funny in the game because you throw the knife and
You can get it back.
yeah, well, when an assassin throws a knife, it sticks in the person and then they go, oh, and then they die.
Oh yeah, and this like ricochets off.
It doesn't matter what hits them,
Yeah.
the blade or the handle, it does the same amount of damage. It just kind of bounces off and thinks on the ground.
Maybe that's why it's so hard to kill guards on double agent with them. Every single time Bond throws, they get hit with the handle. They get hit by the handle. They're not staying.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this wasn't the sole instance of a removal either. A portion of other weapons were trimmed to save time. Were seen left over in GoldenEye's code. A dart gun, a flare gun, a fire extinguisher, Time Splitters 2, it came back, Your non-auto shotgun and the taser boy were still
taser
accessible
boy.
via cheats.
Yep.
Some gadgets got tossed to the cutting room floor. A keyring that emits knockout gas. The exploding pen from the film.
Yeah.
That's suspiciously absent.
Yep.
There also were plans for a firing range on the main menu for players to test out their equipment in a non-threatening environment. That and to earn scores in an accuracy mini game to unlock stuff.
Huh.
It was modeled after the one in Q Branch and everything, and alas, the mirrors and transparent geometry caused slowdown and proved to be a lot for the space on the cart, space they'd need for multiplayer.
Yeah.
You have to wait till Perfect Dark to get your shooting range.
So I was going to say, in my opinion, one of my favorite features, I might like it even more than the campaigns, was the challenge and the challenge league modes from the Time Splitters. It's like once you're done the campaign, it was so fun because it added so much backstory and challenge to it. And it's like having that in GoldenEye would have been so cool.
I know. You're not wrong.
It's just like, God. Yeah, that was one thing we didn't get to explore. The challenge mode in those games is fun as hell. It's fun as hell.
It's almost like that game we played at the pinball hall. It's like WarioWare, but for like in a first person shooter.
Yeah, that's essentially it. They come up with different scenarios, and it's such a unique twist on multiplayer. It's really cool.
During testing, Hollis ran into huge difficulties aligning shots. You had to be practically perfect. This was when they came to the smart decision to mitigate the trouble by adding an automated aiming system. It may have been generous, but it certainly didn't take away from the challenge, especially on secret and the Double O agent modes.
I will tell you for certain, does not take away the challenge. Nope, you will. That is God.
The auto aim just gave the player a Bond-like confidence and allowed them to focus on objectives as well as foreshadow what not to shoot.
I know I'm supposed to talk about my feelings on the game in part 3, but that is the best decision that anybody has ever made. I don't understand why certain games it makes sense to me.
A lot of shooters, the emphasis on precision and accuracy has gotten to...
Yeah, not just shooters, like every video game. It's like, come on, man. Like, what, like... To use an example, like Assassin's Creed or something, it's like, if I really should I be missing 8 times with the bow and arrow if I'm a master assassin who's starting a guild of assassins that's going to change history? Just let me fucking auto aim.
No, I agree.
That, especially when you're Bond, right? That's the thing.
Exactly.
It's like you're supposed to feel like fucking Bond, so just running into a room and being like ba 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 and killing 4 people
feels great.
That's what Bond does in the movie. So yeah.
And this was paramount for the genre to exist on home consoles, as it would return time and time again as an industry standard for control-based FPSs. Call of Duty, Medal of Honor, Halo, all sported an assistance in guiding your bullets gently towards enemies. But it took long hours to get just right. Games are defined by their polish and feel.
It reminds me of the Uncharted thing. That's one of my favorite cheats in games.
Yeah. Have you heard this
story? Wait, what's up?
In Uncharted? So Naughty Dog calls it the luck stat. So Naughty Dog's whole thing is that Nathan Drake in Uncharted is one of the luckiest men alive.
I have heard this story, yeah.
So
keep going.
when enemies are shooting at you in the beginning of a battle, you start with a certain percentage of luck and it slowly drains down and they can't hit you at the beginning. They always miss at the beginning of a battle to give you the edge.
That's really cool.
Because he's so lucky.
Now, finally, when you get struck, that's when your luck runs out.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I say. It was just like, oh, is that supposed to be his health? But no, this is like a hidden.
It's a hidden thing that the player doesn't see, but you will never get shot the first bullet that's shot at you in Uncharted.
Which is but you know what? I mean, I suppose a lot of games probably implement that somehow, but I like the idea,
like the philosophy.
A lot of games get around that.
Yeah.
Because guess what? I've said this a million times before, and I'll say it a million times again. It is very easy to create AI that is very good at killing you.
Yeah.
It is very hard to create dumb AI that is believable enough.
Yes, exactly. There's this fine middle ground that you need.
So it's like, it reminds me of Dan and Chris are really into chess. They go to chess, and you can play an AI, and there's got to be like 30 different grades of difficulty you can go through, and then
Hurt Me Daddy, and
they give them names, but the most challenging opponent, the hardest one, is just called Engine. You just fight the engine, which means that the rest of them,
Deep Blue.
you fight the engine because it's like that is the that is a perfect play engine. The difficulties are you have to add in the
mistakes.
The mistakes, yeah.
Machine learning. Oh boy.
Which is I mean, that just says, it's like you said, you can make AI that never misses and shoots perfectly and reacts correctly. It's how do you make it so it feels fair?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and fun.
Yeah.
So this part of the process sucked. Doak and Jones lamented this stage of production. 12-hour days were common. Working weekends were common, as with many turmoils of gaming development. And GoldenEye was sadly no exception. Rare's company mantra echoed in the minds of its employees. Scrappiness with an obsessive ethic was their thing, since the 80s.
Yeah.
As unhealthy as that might be to reflect on today.
Again, I said this in the first episode. It depends entirely upon what is driving you to work. If
you're right.
Yes, if you're there because you are obligated to be there, and someone is obligating you, it's miserable. When you are there because you are obsessed with doing something, it's
and they want it to be.
Yeah,
it's also
there's
also a culture that Rare had that modern video game companies lack, which is like the family thing. Where it's like modern video game developers will spend 18-hour days sleep in their offices for months and months at a time, and then a lot of them will just get let go because it doesn't take 30 people to make a game anymore. It takes 3,000.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's more of a thing, like the thing with, that's happened so often recently where somebody will come out on Twitter and be like, hey, this game's coming out tomorrow. I did 3 months of work on it and I'm not in the credits because that's not how the contracts work. And it's like, yeah.
Man.
Whereas at the very least, all these people at Rare were they were either fresh out of college, like a lot of them, but I'm sure some of them were there before, and a lot of them were there after.
Yeah,
and the ones that weren't there after were at Free Radical after, and then they stayed there for a while.
It's like a lot of them, they clearly in the interviews say that they talked to the Stampers directly. They met the Stampers' 12-year-old child. It's like there's clearly a personal connection between the owners and the developers, and they had huge ownership over the game.
It helps when your direct superiors are in the trenches too.
Yeah.
Like that,
or just what Matt said, look at our fucking Game of the Year podcast.
Yeah.
That took me a very long time to edit, but I did it because I wanted to.
Right.
Whereas
yes.
if my work had asked me to work those hours to do something for them, I'd be like, go fuck yourself.
It's completely different. It's like Randy. It's like
I worked more on this than I did through all of college.
Yeah.
No, that's it. It's like how many.
I'm kidding. I love
it's like how many hours have you put into writing scripts? But it doesn't.
Endless.
It's like it doesn't
more
feel
than anything.
It doesn't feel miserable because it's like you want to do that. And it's like, listen, I'm sure, and I got to say this, I'm sure there were many days there that
actually was probably more than any of my professional or public education.
I'm sure there are many days there that they were probably exhausted and probably were not in the mood to work on the game too.
You're correct.
That is, and it's like I'm not going to that. I feel like saying that everything was great. That's misleading, but it's like
but at the end of the day,
it's like all those things combined. It's a different story, I think. And also, I mean, there was burnout. We won't say that. I'm sure you're going to get to that, eventually.
So the pressure clouded over. Imposter syndrome was setting in. Luckily, the upper management were taking on as much as the workload as everybody else. The studio also fostered friendly competition among the separate departments. They not only wanted to prove to the greater public that they had the talent, they wanted to show their friends down the hall that they had the talent too.
Yeah.
In 1996, Rare was basically split into 4 groups. The Bond team, the Killer team for KI, the Digger team for Blastcore, and the Dream team, the DK folks who were in the midst of Project Dream, later Banjo-Kazooie. Despite the crunch, no one on record described their tenure there as being poor. Adversely, Botwood and Kirkhope stated that they loved virtually every second of it.
Yeah.
Tim and Chris were said to be fantastic bosses, which honestly it was just so refreshing writing the script compared to previous topics we've covered in that sense. And nobody had anything bad to say about anyone. Just a surprising amount of positivity all around that we discussed in our interview with Elise. And the actual location this episode takes place in is charmingly sweet. The once beautiful 18th century manor farmhouse was run down, but it kept its allure. There were barns for each team, locked with their own special key.
Yeah.
What did this look like? It's like the Resident Evil.
I do have to hope. I hope that it's like when I think barns, I'm just like, I'm like, they put in like air circulation system. It's like, dude, can you imagine being out there in the summer? It's like, dude, it's like.
I guess I don't know how like mild or not mild the weather is. And
yeah, it's like a barn is pretty cool to work in until it's like you think it's like. Well, it wasn't just a barn,
or
right?
if it's not insulated for winter.
Thank you. I'm just like, well, they had like temperature control and bathrooms in there, right?
Vision like straw and cows, but also computers.
all computer. Yeah, it's like I'm sure there was like a concrete pad, but I just thought about it. I'm just like they added in like they didn't have to go to an outhouse, right? Like they added in modern amenities, right?
I don't know. Roosters and chickens wandered the property.
That's just the thing you said. It just imagine like a Resident Evil style thing, and it's just 4 keys, and one of them's Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo's head. One of them.
No, it'd be the puzzle piece.
Jiggy.
Yeah,
and
Jiggy.
then the second one would be the nuclear symbol for Blast Corps, and then Pierce Brosnan's head, and then the Killer Instinct logo.
Yo,
these.
If we ever get a chance to interview Doak, write that down as a question.
Yeah.
Like,
what did the keys look like?
No, what did the barn? What were the barns like? It's just like it's like barn. It's like we assumed that they were renovated, but like how renovated?
You're right. Yeah, when I picture a barn, it might be different.
Yeah,
It was just a bunch of computers next to a feeding truck.
So inside the GoldenEye den were posters of Blade Runner and Pulp Fiction. They were tacked over the exposed brick, so there was brick in there.
A brick, okay.
A life-size cutout of Pierce Brosnan stood in the corner watching them. Some funny guy even put a roll of toilet paper over the gun he was holding.
Okay.
Hilton shelves were decked out with model sports cars. Dokes had a Teletubbies print with movable character magnets that people would shift about in, quote, compromising positions. They have fun.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that they don't work hard. The vibe there was mostly quiet and busy. Honestly, with a squad member occasionally walking to and from the courtyard canteen to bring back tea or coffee. Doak and Hollis would have to duck out for a quick smoke. Whenever Kasuke Taraski and Kenji Okubo from Nintendo would drop by their campus to assist in translation, they would join. They'd all hang after hours and get beer and curry together, entertain one another with Sean Connery impersonations and geek over Star Trek. This is so wholesome. I love it. Apparently, that's where the red-shirted innocents in the streets came from, by the way. That Star Trek trope.
That's a great anecdote.
Back in the barn, there was a soundproofed recording room where employees would take breathers in and shout obscenities to clear their heads. We need a rage cage. Wait, what is it called in Futurama? The angry dome.
God, you're right. I feel like that could be a really useful, just like it's just a room where you get pissed
blow
off.
off steam,
Yeah.
But as Austin said, they really were a family, and the shared respect was always present. The only argument anybody there is reminded of was in regards to how the tracer fire worked in terms of visibility.
Okay.
And when you think about the tremendous stress these dudes were under, that is stupendously impressive.
That was the only argument.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
The devs consistently attribute the title's success to their dynamic, and Hollis himself repeatedly rejects the auteur theory that collaborative art, such as with video games, are the outcome of a singular entity. Directors are never the solitary reason a movie nails it, right? Jones agrees with this, saying there wasn't a top-down hierarchy at Rare. They trusted each other's judgment rather than adhere to a strict organizational structure. Nobody wished to make a generic shooter. They strived to give us something awesome. And that meant that the programmers, designers, artists, sound engineers, musicians, and QA testers had to be united in harmony for it to happen. So, we're now a ways along into development here. Can you guys guess what major component is still missing?
Oh, I know.
Multiplayer.
No, that's later.
The ZX Spectrum emulator that was hidden in it.
That's later.
Wait, what component was still missing? I thought it was actually I thought that was the real answer, the multiplayer. Okay.
So it's still on rails.
More important than that. No. The fucking console it's supposed to be.
All right.
My God. Wow. Actually, I thought that was damn. Okay, we had to keep going further and further back. Yeah.
At the LA E3 in May 1996, Ken Lobb would stand on stage in the main conference hall next to a podium. Resting on top was the fabled Nintendo 64.
Was it called the Nintendo 64 at this point?
Uh-huh. Okay. It was renamed from the Ultra 64 to the N64. It didn't have as crazy as like a Dolphin to GameCube or Revolution to Wii
Ultra 64 is a cool name.
Yes.
Remember the Wii U was called Project Cafe? That was dumb.
That was stupid.
So, I mean,
what was the Switch?
I don't remember.
Well, so does that mean the official title of the Nintendo 64 is the Nintendo 64?
I mean, Nintendo was in the name of all their stuff somewhere, right? So it's the. Oh
yeah, I forgot about. Yeah, no, the Super NES. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
They've been sticking with it for a while.
Yeah,
and fix it as it broken. So then, two young staffers of NOA's Treehouse division walked out with them. One picked up the controller, Lob turned on the system, and the whole world laid eyes on one of the most monumental and historic games to ever grace the art form, Super Mario 64. The crowd collectively heard Charles Martinet's iconic non-Chris Pratt Mario voice.
Yeah.
And then...
what are you talking about? They had all already played...
Mario's Game Gallery.
Mario's Game Gallery.
Yeah.
They knew who
Go
it was.
Fish!
Yeah.
Codename NX was the Switch. I had to look at that.
Oh, right. Because it was so simple. That's why I forgot it.
Yeah,
then after the glorious 3D panoramic opening outside of Peach's castle, and this was airing on a mega-sized television behind them, basically their audience was in awe. This moment was big. And when heading over to the Biltmore Hotel's ballroom following the demo, a party scene filled with Cirque du Soleil performers, this was where the public would first catch a glimpse of GoldenEye 007, one of a handful of titles promoted in a compilation video showcasing the system's upcoming library. The short clip that you can still find on YouTube features the, I don't know if there's sound, features the then on-rails beta of the solo mission with the player, the one I pointed out on the back of the box in our interview.
Oh, yeah.
Where you're using the AR-33, not even obtainable in that level, and it's you're slowly being escorted around a set path, aiming and shooting at Russian soldiers. The response was mostly whatever.
Yeah.
The people were too enamored with Super Mario to care about a Time Crisis wannabe based on a now 6-month-old movie.
Yeah. And
I blame them?
Was this the E3 that I was thinking about before? Was this the Banjo one?
No.
Yeah, I knew. I'm like, there's
E3 97.
There's a couple of conferences they got to get through. Yeah.
But obviously, this wasn't the GoldenEye that would eventually come to know and love. And just how did this project go from that pitch to winning Game of the Year awards 15 months later? So around this period was when the Bond team would finally get access to a proper Nintendo 64 dev kit. That initial relief then quickly gave way to disappointment, however, when they learned that the hardware was not nearly as powerful as previously indicated.
Man, that has got to be... It's not just a letdown, but that has got to be... Can you imagine making that discovery?
And you're that far along?
And not only that far along, can you imagine making that and realizing, like, oh my God, how much you need to scale down the performance?
Yes. So with that, the processor was 3/4 less fast than what they were told. Both the ROM and RAM were going to be an issue. It still gave them advantage in texture rendering over the Saturn, 3DO, Atari Jaguar, or even PS1, but the limited cache meant assets would need to be downgraded in pixel count. What they had generated prior would cause the gameplay to slow or crash. Therefore, an equal balancing of memory to half graphical fidelity and half performance had to be optimal. So if a level couldn't run at a decent frame rate, backgrounds and characters and props had to get retouched to hit that speed. Colors were first to be changed. RGB is a processing hog, so several of GoldenEye's visuals were converted to a more black and white grayscale, with color accents being done by hand. They had to get specific and very technical and edit individual pixels to achieve this. Remember, this didn't share the cartoony look of Nintendo's other franchises. They were going for realistic. Space was a hurdle too, of course. Memory was conserved by recycling art assets. The multiplayer radar was a repurposed barrel drum model turned upside down.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
And they had to be clever, creative in their compression solutions. Fog was added. Open areas like Cradle were particularly a nightmare. Even in tighter corridor-type zones like archives, rooms were split into smaller rooms with shut doors added to hide draw. The player only really needed to see what was in front of them. An example being in Dam, where the dual gated scene with the truck was inserted to free up hardware budget.
Yeah, no, they do that. So it's like they make sure that you're not going back to that area before they deload it. Or if you do go back to it, you got to deload.
Wait.
Yeah, you got to deload the area. Yeah, so
They're still doing it.
I mean, another example of that
There's
is
a reason
in
the God of War when you got to crawl.
Oh, you
have to crawl in the cracks.
Yes.
Or like any game that does that, where you have to crawl under something or crawl through a crack. They're deloading the previous and loading the next one.
Also in facility, ready? The when you are in the U-shaped hallway, you know the lab with the trash can barrels. If you shoot them, the gas.
Of course.
There's a double door before that. Think about it.
Oh, there is. You gotta turn on that console first before you
turn on the console. You run around and there's a little.
There's two consoles.
There's a little room in there, and you gotta wait for the door behind you to close before the one in front of you opens.
Fuck, you're right.
That's like in Halo. They couldn't put that in because the game was so open, so it just literally pauses and says loading, and then
that's kind of like what Half-Life or Red Faction does, and things like But by the end, they'd wrung everything they could out of that fucking machine and its measly 12 megabyte cartridges, managing to condense the entire game file into, oh man, I lost it, but it's less than 12 megabytes.
Oh God.
Tragically, though, many of the devs are still haunted by GoldenEye's inconsistent frame rate.
Less than 12 megabytes, dude, they like, oh my God, they're like images that are larger than that at this point. Like, holy crap.
So they felt bad for that, the frame rate. Ideally, 30 FPS was the goal. On average, it usually ran somewhere between 15 to 30, sub 10 if you count jungle or split screen, and 60 if you count the intro. It was a low number, but not for 97. Sacrificing those frames for more detailed artwork was a deal Hollis was willing to make.
I mean, I don't think they had much of a choice at that point.
Or a sacrifice, I should say,
not
a deal.
I don't think I don't.
I will say, you don't realize people. There's a mini rant, and I don't mean to cut you off in the middle of your.
You're good.
People need to chill out. You don't realize if a consistent 30 is fine.
Oh yes, yeah, we've talked about this.
But once you see 60, you can't go back to 30. And so that's my problem with, and again, you'll get to it in part 3, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But that's my problem with the re-release, the recent port, because we played that XBLA leak, and man, does GoldenEye play real well at 60. It was the same thing when I recently, because of the show, went back and played The Last of Us.
Yeah.
And then I remembered that there is a Last of Us 2 update for PS5. They played a little bit of Last of Us 2.
Oh, shit. I forgot.
I played a little bit of Last of Us 2 at 60 frames.
Next gen all over again. Then.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Fuck. We can stop making graphics look better and just make them look like that.
Just stop there and then focus on like.
I mean, that's unfair because Naughty Dog is our wizards.
Nobody has access to that.
Holy shit, those animations. You think those animations look good at 30?
Anytime you play a Naughty Dog game, I think there was a joke on the Bombcast where they say where it makes you want to dig behind your console, pick it up, and look and be like, what's going on back there? Like something I don't know about.
Well, you don't have to dig behind it on a PlayStation 3 or 4. Because that thing was...
It's going to take flight.
That thing sounds like the Apollo 13 about to launch.
Kill me.
Yeah.
So they overcame those hindrances, except they were still going back and forth on the structure of the campaign and its missions. The bar next door, where the KI crew was, had received a prototype copy of Mario 64. Standing around a CRT, the Rare employees continued to be wowed by the character's movements and freedom. The tracking camera, the animations... and then they began unpacking it bit by bit, really dissecting what made the title so instantly fun. The answer was that it didn't restrict anything. Players were always motivated to explore. They knew on-rail shooters are already obsolete, and this was when they came to the realization, depending on who you ask, according to Elise, that the open on-rail bonus mode that they messed around with would be the game. Unleashed to its full potential.
This is the moment I mentioned. Yes, we interview the author of that book, and she mentions one of the more interesting things. This is according to I guess one or more of the devs. Apparently, none of them could agree on when the actual on-rails change happened, which is fascinating. But yeah, so this is the official story, I guess.
Yeah.
All right.
We're following as close as we can. But,
also, side note.
Yeah.
They sent Mario 64 to the Killer Instinct team and not the Banjo-Kazooie team?
You know, you're right.
Maybe
I'm sure
maybe they swiped their mail.
Clearly, the Banjo-Kazooie team played Mario 64.
Yeah,
but that's weird.
Yeah, maybe this is you're pointing out some shortcomings of a siloed development environment where they just
I mean, they shared it around clearly, but that is funny to me.
That is very funny.
The graphics were able to render the 3D polygons from any orientation or direction. The controller stick with their auto-aim assist made precision feasible. It was no easy decision, but their minds were set. No longer would GoldenEye be a 007 branded Virtua Cop. So they swallowed that pill, got an extension on the release, and delayed the launch again. It still retained a few arcade-like qualities, the location-based damage, the reloads, the penalties of killing innocents, plus the leftover hold R mechanic. The DNA loomed in certain levels. Hell, Train is practically practically a rail with how confined it is.
Yeah, it really, there's a lot of points.
It's a straight line.
There's a lot of points in that game, and I'm sure you noticed a couple. It'll pretty much be a hallway. Essentially, there are parts of it where you can tell it was almost a shooting gallery. I think Silo is the most notable thing, where it's a bunch of hallways with boxes.
You mentioned facility when you open that door and the three guards are just walking towards you.
There are parts of it that very much so feel like a shooting gallery, but there are also parts of it where I don't know when the objectives were decided upon.
Pretty late, actually.
They had to have been, right? Because Train is basically an on-rail shooter.
Yeah.
But the objectives of let's kill the...
Fuck you.
or let you destroy the brake boxes at the end of each train. How many times I had to go backwards? I forgot. Because you imagine if that was on rails and you just start the whole level over at the end because you missed the last one.
That wouldn't work at all.
Yeah.
Pulling Bond off that linear pathing to an open one took a while. Throughout the bulk of production, they didn't have an official controller to use, instead resorting to a, quote, butchered Sega Saturn pad for testing.
Wow. Oh my God, dude, it's like...
Not supplying them with anything.
Can you imagine how much sooner this game would have came out if they just started out working with the technology they needed immediately? It's like it feels like so much of the work must have had to be undone, or it's like a butchered controller. It's like that means that they probably had to take time to do that to
mod this
thing, and it's just like It's like I feel like they would have cut off like at least a year of development time if they had just had it, maybe even more, because he said they didn't get the N64 till a year in.
Yep.
You'd be surprised even now how jank dev kits are.
Yeah.
Like I was reading the thing recently, another anecdote sidetrack, but I was reading a thing recently about how Stadia's dev kits worked, because technically Stadia didn't exist. Except on a server rack.
Yeah, all right, I never thought about that.
And so the way you have to think about it is like when you build a game, right? Let's say like, oh, I found a bug, let me try and fix it. You have to build the game, play the game, find the bug, go back, fix the bug, test the game locally, and then build the game again and then test it again. And it was like with Stadia, you had to build the game, which for some games, especially now, is not a quick process.
No.
You then had to upload it to Google servers. Google had to authenticate it. Google had to upload it onto the rack, and then you could play it on the cloud.
That sounds fucking...
And so initially Google was like, we don't need dev kits. And then everybody's like, yeah, you fucking do. Like, I'm not doing this.
So once that was amended...
That does sound miserable.
They toyed around with a couple different methods for inputs, settling on the scheme we've grown accustomed to.
Yeah, the two controllers.
One hand holding the middle prong with the stick dedicated to both looking and moving via your left thumb. The controller or the trigger underneath would naturally be fire. Your other hand on the right prong for actions like changing your weapon and initiating commands, while the top shoulder buttons being that concentrated aim. They had a ton to figure out. This couldn't mimic a mouse on PC, so having the joystick reset your configuration was a sly way to keep players pointed in the center direction. Not just that, like they did include other attempts. In that you said, Austin, in the options, there were choices for lefties, and if you plugged in 2 controllers, dual analog, baby. They predicted it. Imagine if those C buttons was a stick. That'd be it, 100%.
I mean, yeah. I mean, the C button is essentially just or at least the way they use the C buttons. It's a prototype. You essentially have.
That's how you strafe.
It's dual analog. If one is analog and the other is literally a digital D-pad.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, was the N64 controller the first controller that had like an analog stick?
Yeah. Yeah. It was.
Yeah. Well, an analog stick,
like the official first party controllers.
Yes, but there circle pads existed before that, and then you.
Oh no, the CDI. That had an analog stick.
No, we are not giving the CDI the credit for that.
It's the first one.
Well, no, Atari. You would say the Atari 2600 then.
Like, that's
right?
a joystick.
What?
That's different.
What's this?
There's this motion. You're
just
holding it with your hand, or you're putting your thumb on top of it. Putting your thumb on top of it is an analog stick.
But actually, I think the real question
is... Putting your hand on is a joystick.
No.
Because then it's the arcade.
Right.
Did those have analog input, or were those just sticks with digital, with 8 directions or whatever? I don't know if it was analog input. I think it was just...
And yes, joysticks were digital. They're not analog.
There you go.
And also, the N64's analog sticks? Garbage.
Yeah, maybe
somebody had to do it first,
Yeah, maybe it's
and
like
then PlayStation came a couple years later and knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, maybe it's
like
if you're wrestling.
Dreamcast came and tried their best.
Maybe if you're going to be spending a lot of time holding down a stick with the end of your thumb a lot, you shouldn't A, make the top hard plastic, and B, make the thing holding it up this brittle twig of a thing. And
you get that white gunk in there.
That's the crazy thing is if you've ever taken apart a controller and looked at how an analog stick works, like an Xbox or a PlayStation analog stick, it's the thing your thumb goes on, and then a stick, and then a dome, and then inside is a bunch of magnets and rubber bands, and depending on how the rubber bands pull the magnets, it determines how much you're pulling the stick.
Yeah.
The N64 controller doesn't have that. It's like you said, there's no base with which to rotate around. It's just literally like strings tied to a stick. That's why it gets so wobbly and shitty after like years of using it.
Yeah, no, that was God bless him. It was great, but it's like it was the first time around, I guess. What can I say?
Anyway, back to GoldenEye.
So besides this, that friction was now an element of consideration. Also, additional tiers of difficulty were beginning to be experimented with. Those set adjustments to the aim assist would vary in helpfulness, in part to whether you picked Agent, Secret Agent, or 00 Agent.
Really?
Easy, medium, and hard.
Is there less aim assist on 00? Okay. I didn't know that.
Because the easy is easy, and the hard is hard.
And the medium
this was drastic.
Is medium.
The medium is medium, yeah. It's very medium. And going from on-rails to sandbox meant other reworks too. Guard patrol, AI, and navigation had to be painstakingly modified, since in that light gun-ass genre, getting attacked was normally all you had to deal with. Here, they'd receive the ability to hide, pursue, activate alarms for reinforcements. Doak and Botwood, who were responsible for the pre- and post-mission scenes, spliced in-level scripted events like the various NPC conversations to flesh out the player's engagement with the plot.
Did you see that thing? Botwood, Duncan Botwood? Is the name right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's some cutscenes that change based on...
Yeah, at the end of Depot, whatever gun you have is what he...
The one where you get on the train, the one before train.
That's Depot.
Yeah. If you could kill the guards before you get on, then he doesn't kill the guards. Yes. They're already dead.
But if you just open the door and run in, he kills the guards himself.
Yeah.
It's cool. So it's always like try and find the silliest weapon in your inventory. Yep. You just watch Bond throw knives or use a rocket launcher.
Yep.
This while Hollis kept returning back to Super Mario 64 for more insight. One massive aspect of what made the game so commendable to designers was the way it persuaded you to replay already beaten worlds with new challenges to collect extra stars. GoldenEye could do the same, but in those aforementioned difficulty selections. Rather than only shooting people, a wide variety of tasks can now be assigned to complete each chapter of Bond's adventure. Protecting a sidekick, destroying a mainframe, bugging a chopper, stealing documents, disarming a bomb, infiltrating a base, meeting an informant, even rescuing hostages. A few of these had multiple solutions, others did not. A significant number had fail states. This effectively shook things up. The drama and pacing especially.
I have a weird question, actually.
Yeah.
In that train cutscene, if you're holding up a grenade, does he just hold up a grenade and like shoot bullets out of it and then like?
Right. No, I think he throws it. Like, or at least I don't know if there's an animation of him throwing, but I think it's just like the grenade.
That's what I was gonna say. It's
Well,
like,
we're gonna test out this theory.
I was gonna say it's like you don't.
If you had
you don't
mimes,
actually,
like-
there's no animation, but does a grenade just shoot out of his chest?
Can you
Like,
get
what-
grenades in that
the tank-
level?
No, but there's the all
Depot?
guns
But
cheat,
the all
so it has
guns
to
cheat,
account for
yeah.
Oh,
everything.
yeah, okay. That's true.
Action-packed levels would be evenly contrasted with quieter, sneakier levels. The days of purely grabbing keys to lock doors was in desperate need of a spin. Now, getting past such an obstacle could lead to having to use a decoder gadget given by another spy, or maybe you had to scare a scientist into dropping said keycard.
Yeah.
A drivable tank was added. Originally, Runway was to feature a motorcycle for you to hijack as portrayed in the film, but this was deemed too much for the limited time they were facing. 2 full missions were axed. One that fit between jungle and control called Perimeter, and a second that would follow 007's escapades through the casino, again from the movie. In similar fashion, Streets initially had you actually chasing General Ormov through, but this was understandably undoable in the currently
You know what?
applicable tools.
That level concept would return in Twine, different developer. The world is not enough. You had to chase Bullion through.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you had to chase the assassin in the earlier part of the third level.
It actually, those are fun levels. So it's
They
like the concept doesn't work, but of course, like having a
No,
tank.
I don't know if the idea was that Ormov would be in a car with Natalia, because that's what it is in the, yeah. So with the, like, kind of like the things that got abandoned or, you know, or sort of like tweaked, this is when speculation surrounding the Forbidden Island and Dam and even today remains one of GoldenEye's grandest mysteries.
Yeah. Well, it's not much of a mystery anymore. but
it's
still,
it was, you know,
yeah,
growing up.
I would say it's very much one of its most noteworthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked with Elise about how a rideable boat was intended to be there and then later scrapped.
Yep.
But leaving behind these relics is an undeniable piece of the handcrafted charm of game development in this era, even if Botwood is regretful of it.
Yeah.
Also, frankly, a formal removal was probably more work. Why not let taking a simpler road grow into the title's mythology?
Well, I think that was essentially the philosophy, and also one of the reasons that all of this stuff got left on the cutting room floor. It's just like, it's work to remove it. Just leave it and make it inaccessible.
Yeah.
Which would,
we got to move on to something else.
Yeah, I know. Well, this would later come back to hurt GTA San Andreas. Yeah, I know you guys cover that.
That's a really good callback,
No, I mean,
actually.
that was the...
That's totally the same line of thinking.
It's the same line of thinking. It's like, just like, it's more work to get rid of it. Just make it inaccessible. But like Hot Coffee in San Andreas, I think probably the reason that game companies take stuff out now is because they realize
it's a liability.
Not only that, but it's just like they cut all these things, probably not expecting.
Well, now people are gonna rip it apart, right?
You know, not even now, but look back then. Even then, people like got hints, and it's like people like it doesn't matter. Like, dude, players that want to find it will they become obsessed with it. They want to find the cut content, and it's like even back then. You know, San Andreas, it's like everybody.
We all went on those hunts as a kid.
Yes.
When you get like so obsessed with like a single thing, you're just like, I want to know everything about this. Like,
I think it's the problem now is that it's become way more surgical.
Do you have Sonic the Hedgehog socks on?
I do.
He one-upped you, man.
Yeah.
Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, the problem now is that it's become way more surgical.
Yeah.
Where before it was like, oh, we'll find all the weird glitches and Easter eggs, and then, oh, maybe we have a Game Shark and we can access, like, a gun that got cut, and now somebody just, like, takes the exe file that they get from Steam, and then they put it into a decompiler, and then it gives them a directory of all the files.
It's like, here it is.
They find one text file where some guy's just like, man, fuck my boss, and then they, like, publish it on Twitter.
The new Tetris on N64, that one's great. There's just, like, ASCII arts of, like pot leaves and like middle fingers.
Wow.
It's so good. And I love this. Another Fable dropped feature involved the patented N64 Rumble Pack. It's known that the Finnish version supports it, although there was a brief phase where Doak suggested having the user unplug and replug in the device to act as your held weapon's reload. It may feel cool, but it was instantly impractical to physically perform the action so frequently.
Yeah. Oh my god.
It would also probably break the rumble pack.
Yeah.
If
I don't think it was designed.
not just like the clip on the back of the controller.
Dude, I cannot tell you. Yeah, you know what? It's such a cool idea. It feels like it would be so cool the first time, and then instantly you would hate it.
How many times do you reload in just one mission?
Oh my god!
Like probably,
every 5 seconds.
Yeah, like 100.
Holy god! Yeah, no, you would literally, and especially on those missions where you need to beat it in a certain time. It's like no, you have to take.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. You would not have been able to get any of those cheats.
It's a cool idea, but you know they could have done. I mean, they could have just left it on as a switch on, off, or even better. Leave it as a cheat, and it's just like, you know, clip mode or whatever.
Maybe like if it caused issues, they didn't want. Remember Mario Party? Like, I mean that was after, but
well, you reminded me about that with the analog stick.
Yeah,
I was like, nothing will ever be as notoriously.
No game has ever destroyed more. We had peripherals than that.
I can't remember how many N64 controllers we owned over the course of our time at our
parents. You can tell what a Mario Party controller and what a non-Mario Party controller look like.
We have I think now later
like
bought it
Smash.
Like 2 controllers with all the other ones are like hanging limp. They're hanging limply
Mine
from
too.
like that. Yeah, it's
your brother just bought that really nice one, and I'm like jealous because I was just like, whoa, this is what they were supposed to be.
Yeah.
So the crew were in the rhythm, playtest, riff ideas, iterate, playtest, again, rinse, repeat. Having the builds always runnable helped exorbitantly in permitting them to try new things. Doak swears by this. And Hollis explained how the drive and ambition negated the recklessness of it all. The small size of the team at every voice was heard. Not just that, but the bug fixing stage becomes far more streamlined when your QA person is sitting a cubicle away from the programmer or the artist. Implementing changes when your designer could just shout to another was a big benefit. They'd even share computers, supposedly ensuing chaos if somebody made a typo.
That is, I mean, that's always the lesson, is that it's like, if you really want people to be successful at something, you need to give them room to fail.
Yeah.
Because if you try and control it that much, you're going to get, maybe you'll get, if you try and control it, it's like, there's less risk to it, but also it's like you don't get the creativity and freedom that truly marks like a groundbreaking thing, which is also
exactly,
we've discussed this, that it's like one of the reasons there's so much trend chasing and lack of originality in games is they need to make sure it is going to make money back. And guess what? You can't do. You can't experiment. You can't experiment. And so it's like
that's why they're also risk averse. And too many millions of dollars at stake.
Exactly, which is a lot of times why most of the innovation basically is an indie game, and then all the AAAs will be like, how can we make our version of this?
Nonetheless, this extreme collaboration, as Elise notes it, invited each member to wear many hats and allowed self-expression to carry those thoughts into a reality with record efficiency. Botwood likens the production to being comparable to one of an indie title. And really, it kind of was. Norgate spoke about how today in the AAA space, an entire day might be burned when trying to track down an employee for input. Just a single,
wow. An entire, oh man, that's, oof.
Not that you could get past the rules of red tape to even have this philosophy in 2023. A doc is a doc, and people are paid to follow it. This would still be an on-rail shooter if they did that. They made it to this milestone by barely even having the correct hardware to work on.
Yeah.
It was an atypical way to approach creating an atypical game. The Wild West, and only time would tell how it turned out. Quote, backwards, or quote, anti-design was what they called it. See, rather than writing the objectives first and then tailor the level to that, this pivot led to the opposite.
Yeah.
The architecture was built. Little to no attention was given during that step.
Yeah.
Only after did a starting and ending point get decided, along with enemy placement, item locations. A strange positive was born from this, in that there were now whole areas with no relevance of fragments to the mission.
Yeah.
It felt lived in.
It felt lived in,
and those empty rooms That just added to the non-linearity of it. You'd be free to forge your own route. It didn't matter if you didn't witness it in the motion picture. They're fundamentally separate forms of narrative immersion anyway. This was active, watching is passive. And they didn't fancy being beholden over the exact authenticity of reproducing the source material. Licensed adaptations go best when they take liberties and expand on the story. Star Wars games, for example. GoldenEye's newly open-endedness granted players the opportunity to trek every inch of those backdrops you saw in the theater. They both shared the same blueprint. This was just more. But this attitude didn't only exist in the scenery. James Bond himself was at your will. Be a ninja lurking in the shadows, or go Rambo. Who cares? It's the player's expedition now. The Heroes of Rare just provided the instruments, and the Stampers prided themselves in their hiring. They wanted you to be excited, passionate, to be cool. No preconceived notions of what the medium was. Besides, these folks were too young to be jaded with video games. It's the 90s, and the over-corporatization hadn't ruined everything yet.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't. I would say like that was like probably we used to love hating EA because they were the first. So I'd say like what 2001, 2002 is when it started to tip into that.
That's still an innocent time, even in like
2005 maybe.
I still think later than that.
No, but it was the start of it.
It all started when EA shut down Renderware.
When was that?
And made Frostbite. That would have been 2006.
I think we're still pretty safe until games as a service became a norm.
I mean, you know what? Let's not, because it's a long time. It's like I think that is.
I think 2013 to 2014 is where it goes wrong.
I mean, yeah. It's like I think that is like that is when it started to become.
I know
more,
what you're saying.
It's
EA
like
and Activision had the yearly
Yeah, I was gonna say 360 era.
Yeah.
So here's when we're gonna dig into some of GoldenEye's sound design. At the helm was Graham Norgate and of course Grant Kirkhope. A Scottish-American composer and voice actor who specialized in live compositions. He taught himself to play the guitar at age 11 and is classically trained in the trumpet. He later performed in numerous bands, mainly the Little Angels, and attended the Royal College of Music. Kirkhope joined the Rare Brigade in 1995, writing tracks for Killer Instinct and partying it up with David Wise on Donkey Kong Country 2. Shout out, Bricker Brush Symphony.
Yeah. I mean, there's...
many tracks.
You know what? Actually, now is a good time to mention that story about Mario versus Rabbids, which...
Oh, does he compose music with that?
So I was listening. I beat that game, and throughout the game, I'm listening to it. I'm just like, this is Banjo-Kazooie music. It's like, I can hear it.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is perfect. And I'm just like, I'm positive. I keep hearing it. And I'm like...
Did they get him for ukulele?
So ready? Hold on. Let me
Okay, sorry. I didn't know if that's right.
So, and I'm saying, I'm like, yo, someone plagiarized... Grant Kirkhope's work, and then
you just found out it was him.
And then I get to the credits, and who the fuck made the music is Grant Kirkhope, and I was just like, "Why did
That's kind of cool that you like just from.
It's so it's like I just from hearing it, I was just like, you know
shit, that's him.
You know what?
Or somebody knocking
if we have
him
time,
off.
if we have time after this, I want to do a side by side of the two tracks, and you tell me, and it's like it's so distinct. So, but yeah, he makes amazing music.
To answer your question, I believe ukulele was both Kirkhope and Wise.
Wow,
there you go. Wow,
so, wish it was a better use of their their talent. Norgate actually had been at the studio a year before Kirkhope, starting in '94 after quitting a job at a local bank. He too was a composer, though more on the digital side. And along with Robin Beanland, worked on KI, DKC, and Blastcore, before being brought in to give Bond a bit of flavor as the resident synthesizer guy of the bunch.
Yeah.
Even hunting down the signature GoldenEye gong sample from the movie's score to incorporate into the mixes.
Yep.
Or Austin, edit that in for me.
The gong?
Yeah.
All right, I'll see if I can find it.
Yeah. I think they asked him later on, he was just like, it was from some music library. Someone tracked it down. It is a pitch down tambourine, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Wow,
yes.
How pitched down is that?
Very pitched down, like way pitched down. There's an entire video on it, about it on YouTube. You can look it up. I think he even recreates the sound by doing himself.
So
yeah.
This segues perfectly into the gun samples, which were...
not a tambourine. What am I thinking of? A marimba. That's it.
Oh, marimba.
Yeah,
Okay, that makes more.
I'm
sense.
thinking.
Also-
Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah.
Before we get off the topic of Grant Kirkhope, you know.
Oh, we're not yet.
I was gonna say, you know what other game he did the soundtrack for?
What's that?
A very important game to our podcast.
Oh, the Kingdoms of Amalur. That's right, our first fucking episode.
Mm-hmm.
Wait.
Grant Kirkhope did the soundtrack
Yeah.
for Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning.
Good for him. That's all I gotta say. It's like, listen. It's like he's got lots of, and he's still doing work clearly. So it's like that's amazing.
So you brought up the those audio effect libraries. This was a lot of the guns were like retooled clips like from those. And Austin edited this in as well. The silenced pistol chirp, the originated from an obscure 1942 mystery drama film called Blue, White, and Perfect. A tidbit that we learned from the GameSpot sponsored Firearm Expert Reacts video on the subject. So check them out. The name of that gentleman escapes me. I forget.
Wait,
But that series is fun.
the channel. Yeah.
The GoldenEye episode he does shows off the real life versions of like the Phantom and the Klob. That he points out how all of the two-handed weapons are handled with one arm, so the gun model wouldn't clip through your character model on screen, which I didn't process before.
I also I was telling Randy I found a sound effect wiki.
Yeah.
Where you can click on, they have all the sound libraries. You can click on a sound and it'll tell you every game, movie, TV show,
good.
and
I would get lost in that.
Even like internet videos that it's been in.
I feel like I would look at that and I wouldn't sleep. I feel like I'd be like dawn by the time I get to
rabbit hole.
There was the one sound effect was when you pick up armor.
Oh, that is a weird one.
It's somebody zipping up their pants, but it's sped up.
That makes sense.
And I think like the
rocket launcher squeal is one I've that one's unusual.
What was it? There's one. Yeah, I looked it up and it was like there's only 2 games that have ever used it, and it was GoldenEye. 3 games that have ever used it: GoldenEye, Perfect Dark, and Mortal Kombat 11. I forget what sound that was.
I want to know where that disgusting crunch from running someone over in a tank came from. That's like the gnarliest thing.
You know what the rocket launcher actually sounds like? It sounds like a firework going off. It has that squeal going up,
right,
and I think that's what. Yeah, it has like a screaming sound. It's like I think that it's got to be modeled after that. I think.
Yeah. So anyway, once the engineers had chosen what they liked, they'd properly balance the pitches and edit them into the gameplay, taking account distance to broadcast the right level of volume for proper user feedback. Higher damage firearms gave more oomph, while softer sounding guns produced less of a kick. But this wasn't all. Another component of how the game would utilize audio was in its detection system when either obeying or disobeying stealth mechanics. They'd basically put an invisible radius encompassing the player, and then their actions ran proximity checks sensed by the type of weapon used, rate of fire, and the ongoing amount of loud noises. Each guard had their own circle as well, and with passing time, the count on the alert clock would reset to 0. Those holding the controller could then be tempted to aim for single shots, preferably the heads for enemies or lenses of cameras. Rare wanted you to think before you shoot. Fucking up meant it'd be tough to repair it. Bunker 2 and Archives are prime culprits of this. Why? Because in some missions, a sloppy bond is punished and infinitely spawning soldiers will endlessly generate to chase after him. Even the finite bad guys can clone if you're not.
Yeah,
I think if you're not careful.
Austin, you got to experience that firsthand. Remember when I told you, I'm like, the key to this is you got to keep moving.
Yeah.
Because unless you kill them at their spawn, they'll just keep spawning there.
Right.
Remember, and I told you, I was like, if you go into a room, spend no more than like 5 seconds in there. Because once the enemies start piling up, we're talking like you saw it in that level. It's like there will be 10 guards at the door just shooting.
And he also played the Xbox one where sometimes it'll bug out and make more people.
Yeah. I remember one time on Bunker 2, you go into that first room on the left there, and you were in there and you just turned around, and I'm not even joking.
That doorway?
Almost instantaneously, like a dozen guards all on screen. And it's like, yeah, don't get tricked and caught in there, yeah.
So the only surefire way to survive after that is to stay silent or, once you pull that trigger, carry on.
Yeah.
Turtling to fully exterminate an entire level isn't an option in GoldenEye. You had to move and adapt. The testing continued. One night around 10 o'clock, they'd open the barn windows and blast the soundtrack from the movie Heat through Hollis's massive speakers.
Man, they loved Heat, didn't
They
they?
did. It's a good movie. Chris Stamper didn't react too kindly to this, but it did come with the realization when listening that after 2 years, the game was now finally enjoyable to play.
Which is, I mean, is interesting because it's just like, that had to have been a magical moment because it's like, can you imagine when you're doing all this stuff beforehand? You're like, this still isn't fun, but then finally
When you hear people cheering and laughing,
and then
you're like,
and then finally you do something and it clicks and you're like, oh, this is really good.
Now it's a game.
It's like you got to be really disciplined to just like you got to keep going because like, can you imagine if you're halfway through and you're like, this sucks, toss it. It's like, no, you get to the end first and then decide whether it's fun or not.
Like Doak, and I'm sure many industry vets would back this sentiment, has said that typically a video game feels awful for about 80% of development. And as a former tester of sorts, I don't disagree.
Yeah, I bet.
The deadlines were flying by, although they break through to the degree that everyone in the office wanted to pick up the paddles, as Chris Nunaboom says.
Pick up the
But yeah, to stabilize the timeline here, Tomorrow Never Dies, the successor to the GoldenEye film, was wrapping post-production up and due out soon, meaning that tinkering had to stop.
Wait, just stop and put a narrator here and say it didn't. It's like you still have to add multiplayer.
Yeah, exactly.
You just add the Arrested Development narrator.
Nintendo themselves had already halted their funding 3 months ago because of the delays.
Wait, do you say they halted their funding?
Yes. Rare, being the chads they were, hid this from the team and paid them on their own. They couldn't have a morale drop when nearing the finish line, and the Stampers had faith.
Okay, that is
Insulating
actually,
their athletes from any bad news was noble.
I missed that part.
Mm-hmm.
That is actually incredible.
Yeah.
That is okay. That is actually very extraordinary.
Yeah.
That's really cool. They didn't want to let them know the funding ran out, and so it's like they just paid them out of pocket.
Yep.
That's wow.
Despite this, though, I'm afraid the story still comes bundled with its darker moments. By 1997, the Nintendo 64 was out for sale in Japan and the Americas. More on that in a minute. Crunch was instituted in full swing. This endeavor was over budget and late as fuck. That February, the pressure got so intense to Addy Smith that he formally left the company.
Yeah,
previously, he had visited the hospital twice for stress-related panic attacks while engrossed in working on Donkey Kong Country 2.
Yep. And that's why I needed to caveat. It's like burnout was still a thing. Just because you want to like be there, and it's like, or maybe some people were like, no, it was great the entire time, doesn't mean the entire team was having a good time with it. And it's like, that's a shame that's how that turned out.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's like, I feel for him. It's like, dude, if you're going to the hospital due to work-related stress.
And he doesn't appear to hold any grudges and expresses that his resignation ultimately had to happen to protect his health, but you know, hope you're doing all right, Addy. We thank you.
Full name, I believe it's Adrian Smith.
Adrian Smith.
Yes, Adrian Smith.
Okay.
So he's credited as Addy in the book, but believe it or not, in the game, it gives his full name.
Really?
Adrian.
I mean, I don't know if that's just what they prefer to be. Yeah, interesting. So I'm now going to try and hoist ourselves out of that downer. Let's wrap 64. So with Sega having given them a run for their money in the 16-bit gen and the PS1 also fucking killing it, Nintendo stayed convinced that this machine would trump any of their competitors who dare mess with them. I'm going to read this straight from Elisa's book because it's just too amazing to not.
Yeah. Ads
were seriously printed for their new console saying, "It's the best thing I've ever seen, quote, God."
Yo, that is...
What the fuck?
Yo, this goes back to...
Dope.
You remember...
That's some 90s marketing.
Yo, thank you. I was about to say, it's like 90s marketing is something that we've returned to a couple times, and it is like...
Oh, it's so
It's
good.
like someone just snorted cocaine.
Yes.
And just like everything is just in off the walls insane.
We've talked about a few of them on our episodes, and the commercial for the Virtual Boy where it's like a giant killer robot in the apocalypse, and then what was the N-Gage one? It was like start a fight with someone on the subway or something. I don't... But it was like...
Yes.
I forget. Yeah, it was really ridiculous.
Yeah, how do you trump Sega does what Nintendo don't?
They started...
Yeah,
they
Say
started
God
it all.
disagrees, man. I don't know.
Do you remember, oh God, what was it the Atari Jaguar had some of those
That was
wild...
the Classroom one, right?
Yes.
Where,
Oh God, man. It's like there's too many to name. There's just so many bonkers video game ads in the 90s. And it's like it was the attitude era. It was like I had to have that attitude.
The best video game out of all time are the Ratchet and Clank ones.
Oh my god, they're excellent. The one where it's the little remote control dummy. It drives out to the street, and then the car runs it over, and the kid's mom is like, "Oh my god."
Yeah. Dude, they fire the
series. They turn her into a chicken.
Yeah, they turn the dude into a chicken. Dude, they fire the rocket, just destroys the dude's house behind it.
They have the big magnet. It just pulls like a bunch of trailers. Oh man,
God,
those are so great. So this was what was intended to be a Christmas '95 launch for the console turned into a holiday '96 release. Europe and Australia were still anxiously waiting while the Saturn and PlayStation had the leg up from beating them to shelves. $100 million promo campaign would get them to where they needed to be. Promotional materials kept assuring customers that being patient will be worth it. And many diehard Nintendo kids like me obliged. When it did ship in September of 1996 in the US, you had Super Mario 64 and Pilot Wing 64.
Pilot Wing 64. I think.
I mean, hey, one of those is a masterpiece, but
yeah, I think I previously described that game as me being trauma bonded to that game.
Yeah,
because it's like
because Pilot Wings was also a launch thing for like the SNES and 3DS. It's always meant to showcase.
It was Pilot Wings is always his tech demo, and it's like it's probably.
Do you play a lot of Pilot Wing 64?
Oh yeah, a lot. And it's like
what else are you gonna?
Yeah, it's like what is he gonna do? It's like it's actually genuinely. I will actually say it's probably this 64 and probably most of all the Pilot Wing games a little forgotten by the time, but man, it was fun. But it was very hard.
That was the thing. It was kind of out of my my brother played that when I was little because I never really
so we as kids, it's one of those
you
games.
Just bang your head against it until you figured it out.
So it was one of those games like you didn't as an adult if I can't do something, I practice it and improve. As a kid, you don't really have that mentality. So really what we did was we basically, there's like some of the missions are much, much easier than others. And so we just prayed to find one of those missions and because you can skip certain levels. It's like you have tiers and you just need a certain amount of points in each. And so that's what we did. Later on, I went back and I beat the entire, but it was,
I was amping up because Shadows of the Empire, I think came like in launch window. It's like a few months out.
Yeah, which is that's also a tough game.
yeah. At least it's Star Wars.
Yeah.
Back when Star Wars, there was a different relationship to it in 96, 97. But and so this strategy did all right out of the gate. Like getting those heightened expectations led them to sell 350,000 units in just 3 days. By the fourth month, it had beat out the numbers that PlayStation had tallied in a year. Of course, they'd sprint past them later on, but,
Yeah.
Speaking of the bar, this was following the fucking SNES as well. It was true 3D with 2 to 4 times the processing power of the PS1. There were 4 controller ports, no loading, stupid rumble pack, minimal memory card requirements, and the stuff that demanded those was bull.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, obviously the PlayStation, absolutely destroyed the N64 in terms of sales. What really differentiate us, it's like, we didn't care as kids. The thing that differentiated was the 4 controller ports. You could play it with 3 other friends.
No multi-tap here.
And so that's what it was. So it's like none of my friends, maybe they own PlayStations, but we never played them when we were over their house, if they even owned them. We all owned Nintendo 64s because you wanted to play with friends.
I had that, so it was like kind of like just exactly what you want as a kid, where I grew up, my friend down the street, she had the Sega, and I had the Super Nintendo, and then my other buddy down the street got the PlayStation, I got the N64.
You know what? Actually, that's a lie, because this is I realize it's no, actually, one of my neighbors did have a PlayStation, okay?
For parties, though, the N64 was...
Yeah, well, that's what I was just thinking. I was like, this
room.
was kind of... We started hanging out with him way more often. This is after we kind of... moved away from just hanging out with whoever you're in school with. And it's like, I can't ignore that because that is how I literally played through the first 3 Resident Evil games, 3 times each, and played Metal Gear Solid and all that stuff. So it's like, I shouldn't say none of my friends had it because one of my friends did, and we spent a lot of time with it. Yeah.
Do you know anyone that had a 3DO?
You.
Oh man, damn, that was better than anything I could have came up with.
So the landscape was steady. This raised the question then, where the fuck are all the games? Within just this initial period, the momentum began to slow down for the Big N as the choice of going cartridge had caused a lack of readily available software. The hardware was there, but the fact was that developing for the PlayStation was far, far easier. It had the space by using discs, increased audio fidelity, and it wasn't as complex to build on.
Which we talked about in the
did.
PlayStation episode.
Mm-hmm. Therefore, many once tightly aligned third parties, such as Square Enix, Capcom, and Konami, were beginning to defect to Sony, enticed by the CD format for their latest installments in Final Fantasy, Mega Man, and Castlevania, prior staples of the NES and Super NES family. Former N64 Today founder Martin Watts described the system as being modern and antiquated at the same time.
Modern? Yeah, I mean, that kind of describes a lot of Nintendo's consoles. Modern and
good point.
It's like they're always trying to do something new rather than push performance, but because of that, every console that's come out since the Nintendo 64, it's like just not as powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't help that Nintendo also had strict licensing regulations and punishing royalty policies. By GoldenEye's launch, their book of releases was crawling to 50 or so titles versus the PlayStation's 1,000 plus.
I think that was one of the facts that I bookmarked in like the thing, because that blew my mind. That
she's right. I looked at the end of the generation, it was 400 against like 4,400. Yeah, like it's
no, and it's like, I mean, but still though, it's just like usually when
compact discs were cheap.
When you think about a console, okay, it's like, yeah, there's launch games, and it's like, but by the end of the first year, it's like you got a pretty good selection of it. It's like 50.
That's usually when it's ramping up. Yeah,
that 50 games, and it's just like, wow, that is like, I was like, that's minuscule.
But not that this was at all a sign of quality. Sony relished their foray into commercial tie-ins and sequels, while Nintendo clung to their in-house projects and top-notch partners. Paradigm, Angel, Treasure, LucasArts, and leaders of the pack, Rare.
And yeah, in terms of sales, the Nintendo's library really hurt it. From a consumer perspective, it made the games that were on there that much more memorable. It's like, I would probably struggle to name, even like 50 PlayStation titles, maybe 100, but it's like, it's got 45.
And the ones that stood out really stood out, but it's like, in terms of, what's the word I'm thinking of? Like, the ratio, there's a lot of shovelware on PlayStation.
It's like, I can think of like a dozen like gems in the Nintendo 64, probably 2 dozen right off the bat, and it's like they stand out that much more. And
PS1 is like analogous to the NES or the NES. I feel
it was more of a gated community sort of feel. It was like yes, Nintendo shot themselves in the foot by making it that much more difficult to publish on it, but as a result, the stuff that is there, it feels more curated.
Yeah,
it's
and the stampers were loyal as fuck. Just take a gander at their 64 catalog, excluding GoldenEye. There was KI, Blast Corps, Diddy Kong Racing, the Banjo-Kazooie games, Jet Force Gemini, fucking Perfect Dark, and Conker's Bad Fur Day. They dominated several of the highest rated spots for that console's library.
Oh, yeah.
6 of those were in the 10 best-selling.
Forgot one.
No, I didn't.
Donkey Kong
64.
Ugh.
Wow. And so, yeah. So how many? So wait. So how many is that altogether then? What's the count then for Rare's Nintendo 64 library?
Let's see. 12? 11?
11? Yeah.
Yeah.
And you said,
hold on, let me do that again. I'll do it on air this time. Let's see.
Do it.
GoldenEye, Killer Instinct, Blast Corps, Diddy Kong Racing, Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie, Jet Force Gemini, Perfect Dark, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Donkey Kong 64. And is that it?
I think that's it. You got
Diddy Kong Racing?
I did.
Okay.
I
think that's it.
Is it 11?
That's 10.
10.
Yeah.
So it's like, and you said 6 of them are in the top 10. Okay, I would just like
they
to
beat
point out,
Nintendo at their own fucking game.
Yeah, you might as well have called it the Rare 64. Jesus, It's like, dude, if your games occupy,
why do you think they're not going to do an N64 Mini or Classic Edition?
Oh
It'd
yeah,
be missing too much shit.
You're right. You're right. It's just not. Yeah, all those titles. It's like, dude, if you occupy more top 10 spots than the people who publish the fucking console, it's like yeah.
Yeah,
That
but
said,
those other top 10 spots though.
I know. Yeah. It goes without saying. But that's
Rocket Robot on Wheels,
Iggy's Wrecking Balls,
Glover,
Beetle Adventure,
Quest 64,
Chameleon Twist 2.
Yeah.
So they still weren't able to close the gap between hardware sales. The PS1 moved a whopping 124.9 million units. The N64 arrived at a mere 33 million in comparison. Sony emerged as kings.
How many did the Dreamcast sell?
12, right? It was more than the Wii U.
It was,
but not by much. Wow,
Wow, the Wii U sold less than a Dreamcast.
Yeah, it did.
All the geniuses at the bottom of the ladder. You got the Dreamcast, the Wii U, the PlayStation Vita, the GameCube,
the original Xbox. Yeah,
yeah.
you're right.
You forgot about the Virtual Boy.
No, I didn't.
The CDI.
We're talking about game consoles, not headache machines.
So the Sega and Nintendo, like, you know how they were occupied duking each other out during the early 90s? Like, that was done at this point.
Sony came in and was just like, this war is over. I win. And they're like, okay.
Although without Rare and GoldenEye, it may have been even worse. Doak attributes their survival to them as well as their retainment of the Western market. And killer apps were everything back then.
Yep.
What did you have that your rival didn't?
Yep.
Sega's drive to battle the big N was their diversity in appealing to gamers across multiple age ranges. This included the older crowd who may have grown up with Mario and the like, but then desired hipper and more mature experiences. This tactic sort of worked, frankly, and Nintendo's hyper-focus on only kids was a reason for their loss of that demo. Like, that demographic. Like, it's still kind of is, to be honest.
I mean, yeah, they even said, I want to say, it was before the launch of the Wii, they were answering, it's like, why are you not trying to aim for the mature? It's like, Nintendo will always be a toy company for kids. And it was just like, that was as late as the Wii, and it was like, I mean, let's face it, they're still kind of, I don't know, like, if that's like, they're still thinking about that, but it's like, it's kind of the direction they keep going in. So I know they try and diversify, but it's
if
like,
you have to flavor,
I mean, that's what makes that stuff so, like, you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
if you have to put
when it does happen.
if you have to put bitter in on your cartridges because you're afraid of kids swallowing them, you're making a toy.
you're making it toy.
Kids don't swallow
That's
Blu-rays.
But Rare deviated from the norm. GoldenEye 007 was proof that the 64 wasn't just a toy. It was an entertainment rig for children, teens, and adults. Making the Sony fans and PC users jealous for once. It's reductive to label that era for them as disappointing when genre-defining hits like fucking Ocarina and Smash Brothers were there. But it is, like, interesting. Like, it's like GoldenEye was kind of like growing up with us. It's like, it's, like that's special.
I bought my N64 because of two games.
Star Fox?
No, see if you can guess them. I'll give you a hint. One of them is what we're talking about.
Okay.
What? Wait.
GoldenEye.
GoldenEye.
Okay. And
That'll sell anybody.
was it? Wait, sorry, babe. Was
Rogue
it,
Squadron.
No.
You're talking about N64 games?
Mm-hmm.
GoldenEye and is the game that you beat like 23 times?
No, I bought my N64 in 1997 to play GoldenEye. Ocarina of Time didn't come out until 1998.
Wait. So this is a 97 game then.
Cruising USA. Turok.
It might have been 1998, but it was out before Ocarina of Time.
Okay.
Multiplayer.
Diddy Kong Racing.
Mario Kart.
Randy gets it.
Mm.
You were close.
Diddy Kong Racing
Okay.
was better.
No, it's not.
I'm actually on Randy's side. I like Diddy Kong Racing.
Yeah,
better.
everybody is. You're all wrong.
Because it's
Be on the right side of history.
You're probably also one of those people that thinks Double Dash is one of the better Mario Karts.
It's one of the more interesting Mario Karts.
That's for sure.
Okay, I'm sorry if this is an unpopular opinion, but I fucking hate Double Dash.
Thank
what
you.
the fuck is...
Mario
You know
64 is Mario Kart 64 is better.
You can't land any of the other ones. I
don't hate Double Dash, but I don't think it's I don't know. I think it's on the
I don't
It's not as good as DS 8 or 7.
That's
Or
Well,
six-
no, 7's
or
forgettable.
64.
So I mean
It's
the
better
one
than
thing
Mario Kart Wii.
I think it's the third best one.
So
everything's better than Mario Kart Wii.
So
or the advanced one.
I think the one thing that distinguishes it is that just the 16 player thing, right? Or the
Yeah, the land. That's what he said.
Yeah, that is cool. That is awesome.
That's awesome. And come on, the two... all right, returning back to the core subject, the Bond team was in their final months of development. Finishing touches were getting done. Damn, for instance, got considerable reworks in order for it to serve the players a proper tutorial for the mechanics to come. Feedback testing from employees and Nintendo of America were excellent. Not that this was met without questions. One criticism, though, was its difficulty. There were no checkpoints, no way to restore health. Body armor was nearly absent in Double O Agent. The added harder objectives were tough, but the replayability was more apparent than ever.
They constructed the objectives not by starting with basics and adding extra. The finished set was the Double O Agent, and then they made things easier by subtracting the objective, taking away some of the more difficult ones.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was, which I thought was brilliant. Because that is the right way to design it. It's like, don't make it feel like the objectives in Double O Agent are tacked on. Make it, and that is one of the most interesting things about GoldenEye and what makes it so replayable. When you do it on Secret and Double O Agent, it feels like you're getting more of the mission. It's like you're
seeing more of the game.
You're seeing more of the game, and it's like that really, I think, probably what drove me in high school. When me and you played it, one of the driving factors was I couldn't beat really anything besides Agent or maybe Secret Agent. But as a high schooler, I was able to explore the game on Double O Agent.
We talk about this all the time where it's just like, I wish that was how difficulty was handled in more games.
Yeah.
Like, rather than like just being like, oh, we'll make the enemies have more health and do more damage to you.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not like...
Yeah. And it's like, so as in high school, it's like...
But you're not going to find people who want to program stuff that's not going to get seen.
There were all these cool objectives I couldn't do as a kid. Now, in high school, I could go and be
It feels like a whole different experience.
It feels like a whole different game. And it's like, that's, I think, a lot of fun. And it's like, that is the right way to do things.
No, for sure. The next push they had gotten was a conversation completely independent of that. The violence. Its bloody imagery had to get backtracked to gain approval from the execs upstairs. However, nobody wanted a repeat of the Mortal Kombat censorship controversy that we covered before. Go listen.
Man, you guys just like...
That was lauded over them by their gorier Genesis counterpart.
So much of the discussion always returns to those congressional hearings. Mm-hmm. It's just like, it's yeah.
Still, it's an echo and just forever.
Yeah, it's, yeah.
Some of this was the culture. FPSs weren't really a thing in Japan. Their gun laws were stricter. Their military presence smaller. I guess thanks to us. Here the combatants were...
Oh my God. Just the way you said that line, I was like, wait,
here the combatants were humans, not demons or monsters. Or Nazis. So Eastern games also tended to embrace a cartoon or anime aesthetic rather than realism. They weren't after the shooter trend overseas. Miyamoto himself commented on GoldenEye's more graphic content by at first supporting it. That wasn't until he saw it in practice. See, the 007 films are popular worldwide. However, they never broke into R-rated territory. License to Kill was pushing it and required several edits, as the PG-13 was essential to the IP's Bible of rules.
Yeah, they needed that accessibility.
Yeah,
yep.
Its N64 adaptation needed to follow suit. A T for Teen label from the ESRB was the only acceptable rating, nothing beyond. To secure that and avoid the M, GoldenEye went through a couple calibrations.
Yeah.
At one point in production, enemies' chests could explode in a shower of blood, splattering the environment.
I think someone in the book mentions it was like you could shoot off someone's head and a literal fountain of blood shot out. It's like, man, what did that look like?
They'd have to wait till Perfect Dark to flex those muscles.
Yeah.
Smith did admit that it was comedically gratuitous.
Yeah.
Firing the RCP-90 into a character gave off the impression that you had sliced them in half.
Yeah. I you know what? It's funny. It's like, I wouldn't have taken it out because of the violence, but it sounds distracting. It sounds like it would have gotten in the way.
It's this isn't even in my script, but like, we also have to remember that the ESRB was newly a thing in the United States. Japan and did not have a Zero yet as a rating system, and that's why Resident Evil was, we did that flip where like they got the uncut ones first. Now we do. And they don't, but I don't even think Peggy was started. So it's like they're in the UK, so they're like, do whatever.
This is also still a problem. We had a conversation about this earlier today. about Jedi Survivor.
Right.
They're adding dismemberment back, and Disney finally gave in and let them.
Fuck you, Disney.
Let them use lightsaber dismemberment
About
again.
time. Bring it back to Jedi Outcast.
I was gonna say, Jedi Outcast is. It's like, come on, Disney.
Yeah.
Just.
The OG gore art consisted of 4-dish textures with the effects similar to when Hollywood uses squib charges. They tried swapping the red for other colors, kind of like RE2 did on the N64, but it looked terrible.
Yeah.
Instead, they toned down the amount by around 20%, keeping the staining on the clothes.
The staining on the clothes.
And supplemented the splat marks with a tiny yellow spark for when you struck people with bullets.
You know what? I think it works perfectly fine. I think the red marks on the clothes is like, yeah.
I think it works better for the IP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because Bond doesn't, there's no fountains of blood.
Yeah.
Really in Bond.
Well, they know when to cut away. You can't cut away in a game.
Exactly.
But it's like, I think that it allows it to be distinct from Perfect Dark, because Perfect Dark gets to be that raw and gritty and bloody thing, and
And did Perfect Dark was M?
Oh
yes.
Yeah.
Anyways, President Howard Lincoln, his concerns hadn't subsided. This still wasn't reminiscent of their company brand. Upon viewing footage of the supposed protagonist delivering post-mortem damage, he stormed out of the room and nearly threatened cancellation over it, according to Botwood. And they weren't alone in this opinion either. A visit from the suits at MGM left them cautious too.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the evidence that our favorite hero spy executes more people in the GoldenEye movie than any prior or succeeding Bond flick to date.
Oh, it's the highest kill count.
Not even Craig outdid it.
Wow.
Excessive sanitation wasn't the answer. So compromises were reached. Bodies had to vanish shortly after death, which was fine for freeing up memory.
Yeah.
Again, they'd have to wait for Perfect Dark to keep that.
I'm actually even surprised that was even part of the violence agreement. Even as a kid,
today the ESRB it always specifically lists postmortem damage. That's a large one.
So even as a kid. So, but before we
Soldier of Fortune,
before we migrated the games down to the basement because our parents were tired of us taking up the TV upstairs.
Yeah, I went through that.
We played our video games on the upstairs TV, and my dad has seen us play this game, and we're like, look at how many people we shot before, and because there's a mountain and they were gone. I was like, they disappeared, and then you could if you stand there, you can watch them disappear.
Yeah. It's pretty quick, which happens in a lot of light gun games too.
And so my dad pointed out he's like, they need to free up memory and resources. If you just because if you just keep adding bodies, it's going to start stuttering. And so even as a kid, I thought it was a
rare
memory issue.
Sir, I know that in Perfect Dark there's a limit that you can eventually reach, but with bodies, but the bodies that are you can just keep gunning at them and just endless blood.
Talking about their ESRB rating is very funny. Did I ever tell you the GoldenEye story? Why I bought an N64 because of GoldenEye?
You were at a cousin's house?
Yeah, my cousins had an N64 and they had it in the in the family room with the TV.
Yeah.
And then my one cousin bought GoldenEye and my aunt was like, nope, you're not playing this. And so my uncle bought a second N64 and hooked it up to a TV in another room, and then they used to go in there and play GoldenEye.
Wow.
Awesome.
That's incredible.
That's one of those stories
because then I went over and my cousin wanted to show me GoldenEye, and that's when my aunt found out about it. And then I think I don't remember if I bought it.
Yeah.
Or if I borrowed it or he gave it to me, but he wasn't allowed to have it anymore.
It's funny. My dad was just psyched that I had an interest in James Bond, but it's the first instance that I played GoldenEye was actually at a Toys R Us. It was just it was like a kiosk set up, and I played Damn. And it's interesting to think that there was just a first-person shooter on display at a Toys R Us, where I'm 7 years old. This wasn't enough to totally please Miyamoto, though. In fact, he was so upset that he'd fax suggestions, many of them silly, to the crew for further changes.
Oh, here it comes. I know this story.
There was, quote,
it's so good.
Too much point-blank killing, and he didn't wish to stand behind a, quote, murder simulator. Again, with the fucking term.
Point-blank killing. What does distance matter?
Point-blank killing.
I guess Miyamoto is a big fan of Sniper Elite. He's perfectly fine with it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it's okay.
Yeah, I wanted them to make it back on rails so they could use the Super Scope.
In an effort to alleviate the tone, he thought to include an ending credits cutscene where James would meet everyone that he had dispatched throughout the campaign at a hospital and shake their hands.
It's like the Metal Gear Solid 3 level.
Yeah,
you go through the end when you go through the river and you see the souls of everybody you killed.
Dude, I killed a lot of people. Like it's like even if you see the helicopter violence.
Yeah,
too,
dude. Yeah, because it was like. I'm like, when were those there? And then so you realize he shot down a helicopter, and it's like, well, logically it was being piloted. They better put them in there. It's like, wow, dude. I mean, that's the level of detail that makes those games charming. But anyway,
so this whole hospital thing, it was to show that none of the brutality was real, but all an act. It was a performance similar to the theater curtain call framing device in Super Mario Brothers 3.
Yeah, I gotta. Part of the reason that the Miyamoto story and the shaking hands in the hospital is so funny is because, like, it is the most ridiculous suggestion.
Ridiculous, yeah.
But I know he was sincere about it. He thought it was a genuinely like, this will fix the problem. Like it's like, which is like the most. It's just so like, it's just so absurd that it's just like what goes through his mind? Like, so it's like,
how are you getting that fax? You want us to what?
Yeah, it feels very Miyamoto, in my opinion. That's just.
But Hollis then surmounted a genius sort of middle territory with the introduction of the quote unquote meet the cast segment that opened and closed the adventure. This sequence told you that they were fictional people, actors. It was fine.
Yeah, and essentially, it's funnily enough, it was like, in order to because it's like they're not like normally in a cast credits you list the role and then the person who played it. Yeah. In those credits,
it doesn't say the actors.
Well, it says the character name and then the role they played.
Yes.
So James Bond is 007.
Yeah.
Right. Natalia is a satellite programmer, and it's just like it's funny that it's like
that is weird. Yeah. Yeah. Alex Trevelyan is 006.
It's 006. Yeah. Yes, and it's like what do you call it? It's like Arkady Aramov is Russian general.
Yeah,
it's like
ex-KGB agent.
Yeah,
that's funny. Miyamoto's last note, though, had to do with minimizing casualties of non-violent NPCs, a constructive critique that led to the already discussed mission goals that could fail you if you otherwise violated them. Nintendo might not have understood Bond the way they did, but the insight was valuable in crafting the game's lighthearted spirit. Doak even claims that the origins of the sniper rifle came from it. Fatalities at a further distance were less troublesome to the publisher. No knives, just bullets and scopes. So manufacturing was right around the corner, except one key ingredient was still missing. now
multiplayer, yeah.
Fucking which is split screen fucking multiplayer deathmatches.
It's like, man, it's like we're like getting towards the end of this episode, and it's like now the multiplayer gets in.
GoldenEye staying power wouldn't be anywhere near what it was without it. This added bonus feature skyrocketed an already fantastic product into a legendary one. And it almost wasn't even a thing. Where would sleepovers have been? College students would have spent more hours studying. Horrible.
Yeah, of course.
So shooters on PC by here were dabbling with online, but that wasn't the same. Having 4 friends sit together with their own POV and access to yours was never approached like this before. Like that never did that. Like was this? I can't think of anything that tackled like individual 4-player split screen, especially in.
I'm really trying to think. It's like what? Yeah, it was this. Wait a second. Was this also the first 4-player? No.
I mean, there was
Mario Kart. That was 4 players. When did Mario?
4 players split screen.
Yeah, it is.
And when did that come out?
Before GoldenEye.
90. It might have been early 97.
Yeah,
but I was more thinking about from as a shooter, like as a first person.
Oh, as a first person, yeah, first person shooter without a doubt. Because Turok did not have any multiplayer.
No whatsoever.
And then it was like if Doom or Quake,
they did
not. And
Doom on PS1 at LAN, but
that's cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Halo and Gears of War devs declared its significance. But where did the idea come from? Longer days in the Rare office were riddled with network sessions of competitive Doom on their workstations. Then they got a taste of the local joy after a copy of Mario Kart 64 showed up on their doorstep, as we said. It was indisputable that multiplayer would make the game more more fun.
More fun, yeah.
An activity that ranked even above both Doom and Mario Kart in their blowing off of, their after hours enjoyment was none other than Super Bomberman for the Super Nintendo.
Which, by the way, and speaking of Mario Kart 64, that was
Bomberman's great.
So aside from GoldenEye, that was also like the neighborhood game. I don't remember if we got into it before or after GoldenEye or whatever, but it's like at one point, whenever friends came over the house, it was always Mario Kart. I played so much 4-player split screen of that. But then eventually, it was GoldenEye. Yeah. It's like you kind of go through phases as kids.
Yeah, no, you're
right.
And
there was a Pokemon phase,
and they would just kick it to fucking Bomberman. They hosted tournaments. Controllers got hurled in anger. It's its cartridge getting chucked out the window was just the epiphany they needed. They had to recreate that scale of emotion.
Whoa, the cartridge got chucked out the window?
Yeah.
I forgot that detail. Damn, that is what we call rage quit. Holy shit.
So the will was there, but this shit was ready to go gold here. Any fantasy early on to produce such a mode was dropped when they didn't even know how many ports the system would rock.
Yeah.
Plus, they were facing deadlines. Another delay was not in the cards. The stamper said, under no account is anyone permitted to work on a multiplayer mode. This isn't the time for extras.
Yeah.
Well, to the benefit of us all, Hollis didn't listen, and under the radar kind of asked one of his designers to see what they could do with the concept.
Yeah, didn't he bring Steve Ellis on specifically? Just be like, yo, just come in here under the radar. If you can get this shit done and working.
Yeah.
And keep going.
No, you're right. A man named Steve Ellis, who we haven't spoke much on yet, as he was the final member hired aboard.
Yes, that was it.
He was fresh out of school and had been programming since 8 years old. At 9, he fucking started attending college courses while coding for the Amiga and ZX Spectrum. Limitations were his bread and butter into problem solving. Before this task, his role in GoldenEye was optimization, texture compression, microcode. He's what made it functional. And also the person who snuck in a playable Spectrum emulator inside the game.
Okay, yeah.
Along with 10 ROMs. Just to know if the hardware can handle it.
Yeah, okay, so he wasn't hired for the role, but I remember he was a late joiner. Yeah.
And Rare would disable that pre-launch, but the homage to the studio's history does live on in the files.
So, okay, here's the bigger question is, I know that it lives on in the files, and they disabled it. I mean, is it accessible in any way if you...
I think people have reverse engineered it.
That's what I'm saying, which also, it begs the question, I mean, now we have Rare Replay, and we can play the Spectrum games, but it's like, I mean, I've never really seen any videos about doing that. Like, one would think that, like, that would be an interest in, like, for retro game. And it's like, I never really hear anybody talk about that.
It's like, I remember when Animal Crossing came out on the GameCube, and that was kind of crazy to see NES games, like, emulated on, like, on their official console. Like, that was kind of crazy, but this is 97, and then, like, a ZX Spectrum, like, it's wild. But with Botwood by his side, him and Ellis got the multiplayer running in only 6 weeks.
6 weeks.
And at that pace, it was told to be, quote, the work of a magician.
No, I mean, really, truly, it's like they had enough trouble optimizing single player, and it's like, really, it's like you think, like, it's like, well, a lot of the assets were done, and it's just like, can you imagine the work they had to put into getting the 4-camera thing? It's like, that's to me... It is a work of a magician, because I think about it and it's just like I
don't know how the fuck.
I don't know how they did it.
And soon there were spawn points for players, weapons, armor, and ammo, complex stages like complex.
Yeah.
The process was tedious. Backgrounds and polygons were stripped down to maintain speed. Edmonds jumped in to alter any conflicting animations. Steadying the frame rate was a gargantuan cliff to climb. Technically, 12 human models could be rendered on screen in the 4 windows at once if the conditions were right. It was crazy taxing for the 64.
Oh, yeah. It's like if you had a gunfight in a single room, you were dropping down to like 5 frames. There was nothing.
But when Ellis presented what the 3 had to the rest of the staff, it was a done fucking deal, man. GoldenEye would ship with 4-player death matches. The whole office was instantly addicted.
Oh, yeah. Not just the whole office, but I think visitors who
they would call in,
I can't remember.
Folks left and right. Any mission from the campaign was considered. However, many were too large and ran too slow. A few held up with 2 people, but not 3 or 4. Other environments were entirely custom. Qualifiers were next. Bomberman inspired them to incorporate mines, and the split screen setup made covertly watching your opponents as much as the experience as controlling yourself. Modes based on Bond's past outings got put in. Man with the Golden Gun, where you must become the man with the Golden Gun. You only live twice, where you only live twice. Team battles like 2v2 and 3v1.
I forget. I was trying to think of all the game modes, and I was like, you only live twice. I wonder what that's about. It's like the name of it is literally the name of the mode. You only live twice.
They had when we were playing Halo Infinite, and Oddball came up, and I was like, right, this was a GoldenEye mode, the Living Daylights. With
we had a discussion about this because you talked about one of your favorite modes from Halo 2 or 3, Infection. And he described it to me, and I'm like...
Is that in Time Splitters?
It was in Time Splitters.
That's right. Yes.
It was called
like Virus, I think.
It was called Virus.
Yeah.
Yes. And I was like, he described it to me. I'm like, that's Virus from Time Splitters.
It's better in Halo too.
Fuck it. I knew. So Slappers only, and as we pointed out, the phrase is taken... Apparently, it's British slang for...
a whore.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, dude.
Promiscuous woman is what I have written.
You mean a whore? No.
So you could fill the shoes of any characters you wanted, not just the GoldenEye leads, but every NPC and enemy you encounter as well. I stopped there. This roster was huge, it was massive, with so much to yank from in the 007 canon. You had Mayday from A View to a Kill, Baron Samedi from Live and Let Die, the mega-sized Jaws from The Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker. They had the license, like, why not?
Yeah, I think after you beat the game, you could also unlock all of the
all the guards,
and I think Elise mentioned that she loved playing those guards because it was such a unique thing to just be able to play.
Yeah, that was
it's
weird,
like you're not like it's just unique just being able to play those cool, like, just generic NPC characters, because it's like lots of people will play Bond, but it's like, I love playing the Moonraker agent.
It does let you kind of craft your own identity, like when you're playing split screen with your buddies.
It's just like, and I mean, they brought that back with Time Splitters. They
brought that back and then some.
Yeah, it's
even
like,
today, I don't think games have that many.
It's like it got to a point of, like, it was amazing because it got to the point of silliness where it's like, if there was someone in that game, like an NPC in that game that moved or did whatever, you could play it in multiplayer. It's like it was, which is just
they rendered it.
They rendered it. They put it in. It was like that. It was such a cool. It really made that game charming.
Now, obviously, we'll have to give credence to their funniest and most unfair inclusion, the teeny tiny Mr. Objob. And truth was, he wasn't even that short in the Goldfinger movie where he comes from.
Yeah, and it's like it's funny because it's like, I think it's like, they said the actor is like 5'8" or something like that.
5'10".
5'10". That dude.
That's taller than me. I'm 5'9".
Yeah, I'm 5'8", dude. It's like, and so it's funny because it's like, you're right.
Here I am 5'8".
And you're right, but you're right. You think back to it and you kind of think of him as
they thought his height was definitely a mistake of the crew confusing him for Knick Knack.
Knick Knack, yeah. I don't know what it is.
It was actually, he was 3'11".
And it, oh yeah, and it's funny because it's like, until that was pointed out to me, when I picture Oddjob and Goldfinger, I think of him as a squat Asian man, and it's like, oh, he wasn't that at all. And it was like,
because I played this game before seeing the Goldfinger movie, so I was like that film. But
and I think they attributed to in the movie you constantly see him crouched over with the hat, and so it's like maybe that like gave the impression of shortness.
That's true. But by turning him into a smaller target, it made choosing the henchman a major advantage, as well as a generational touchstone in the gaming ethos.
Yep.
Elise calls him, quote, a destroyer of friendships for the most despicable cheaters.
You want to know what's even
Which
funnier?
I love.
Okay.
Yeah.
My favorite character was Jaws. Because I like
you put yourself at the most disadvantage, technically.
If you aim forward with
the headshots
you shoot over his head. You need to aim down if you play Jaws and try and shoot Oddjob. He is literally below Jaws' sight line.
Oh, man.
That was like, and I was like, wow. So it's like, no wonder No wonder I lost so many matches as Jaws as a kid.
I liked playing as the ladies.
The two of them?
There were more than that.
Oh, well, yeah, sorry. No, I meant...
But no, they were the main two.
No, I was actually thinking of the two lady NPCs that made it into multiplayer that were cut from...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's the Moonraker.
Yes, and then also there's a civilian and a scientist.
Who
I think we mentioned in the last episode that it used it was the photo from their...
Sally? I think
Sally.
it was.
Yeah. Good memory.
Presumably, yeah.
So either way, the guys at Rare, they thought it was hilarious and kept him in. If it pissed you off, you could just give your, who's next to you, like who's chilling a foot away, a nice smack in the back of the head. That was part of the experience too. And true balancing wasn't their intention anyway.
Yep.
In an unfortunate twist, the quote all bonds feature had to get nixed due to likeness rights. Apparently, Connery was the holdout there, with them being instructed that this could cost them as high as $1 million to amend. They understandably went, nah. However, you can still access him and Roger Moore and Timothy Dalton models through the use of Game Shark, which I did. Yeah.
Wow.
Connery's got the white suit on.
Man, Sean Connery didn't sue them for content left in the game.
Not that this concluded their insertion of loads of other homages to the property. The Moonraker laser, the electromagnetic watch from Live and Let Die, the surrender flag was a reference to Living Daylights. Not to mention the control configuration names alluding to various Bond girls, from Dr. No to Thunderball to For Your Eyes Only. The list goes on and on. I think like Octopussy is one as well. Anywho, one morning when Klob popped by for a check-in, Hollis dragged him into their conference room, plunked him onto a chair in front of a proto, like the GoldenEye cart with a set of controllers and booted up a match. He was blown away. Hollis then stated his reasoning for doing this was to ask one request, a final delay. 6 more months to master what they built. Lob was hesitant, but he just couldn't resist.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of it.
Best decision he ever made, because the impact of this feature was going to be, whew.
I think that's really, it's like, there's so much that it's like, could have failed in the improv, and it's like, let's face it, if it wasn't such an instant joy for all these people, Ken Lobb would have been like, it's nice, but it's not happening. But it's like, just the fact that so many people were so overwhelmingly in love with this feature. And it's like, I think it's
we have no other choice.
And really, it's just like, even if he thought it was amazing, like maybe he would have said it's not happening, but it's just the fact that it's like he personally saw this selling so many copies, and it's like that faith in something, that person, like it didn't come from like, the guys upstairs. It's like he personally thought like, we need to keep this in. I love this. And it's like taking that leap of faith on behalf of the game company. It's like putting himself out there, putting his neck out there. Because what happens if really only he liked it? Is such a story. It's really incredible.
Although this came with a caveat. Hollis was told to lock the mode behind a controller button combination so that he could then dramatically reveal it to the Nintendo of America Treehouse group in person. Meanwhile, Ken would implore Howard Lincoln to grant the additional time to finish it. This was how we got all those customizable settings, to which the diversity in options seriously boosted the longevity.
Yeah.
There was a plethora of ways to play, and it was supremely accessible with its learning curve. The auto-aim assist encouraged casuals to square against the tryhards. The sight of seeing each individual's view made it amusing to watch when someone had to sit out around.
Yeah.
The couch multiplayer made the social banter and ribbing forever ubiquitous with your night. Who gives a crap about the frames? Nostalgic defenders like myself mourn the loss of this interconnected love. Online games turned winning into a priority. Hollis goes on to bemoan the transition from a party on the sofa into the solitary activity that is so prevalent today. Yes, it's more convenient, but it's it's less emotional. It's a different feeling, and it should be a parallel, not a replacement. It's why we still regularly invite the gang over for Rock Band and Smash Brothers and Jackbox. Modern pillars of the, of like keeping that alive. Exclusively indulging yourself in those gaming spaces by means of the internet increase toxicity and reduce good sportsmanship. Here you could even establish your own rules or etiquette. I know in my circle we had a mercy rule against killing anyone who was unarmed. So polite, But I digress. Apologies for the grumpy elderly rant there.
Oh, yeah.
The Nintendo 64 just lent itself so well to this. GoldenEye lent itself well to this. Its contemporaries in 97, like Turok and Doom 64, weren't equipped, Moving into June of that summer, it was time for E3 again. This year, set in Atlanta, Georgia, there were over 500 exhibitors debuting over 1,500 titles. Booth babes were afoot. 1-to-1 scale replicas of R-Wings. Resident Evil 2 was there. Final Fantasy 7 was there. Fucking Metal Gear Solid was there. Half-Life, Quake 2, Future Topic, Daikatana.
Oh, yeah.
Nintendo's floor was a tad sparse, though. Really, their booth was more of a rare one. Banners of mascots hung from the ceiling. But against a wall of 8 kiosks next to a cardboard Brosnan cutout was a playable demo of GoldenEye. Stations that mostly went unnoticed.
Yep.
Goddamn Banjo was stealing the spotlight.
God, if I did, so that probably contends with my favorite anecdote or like part of that story, because I just think it's so hilarious that it's like it wasn't even another company that overshadowed them.
It was the people down the hall.
The people down the hall. And it's just like, I mean, it also, again, lends it back to itself of just like, it's like you said, it's like, there was no Nintendo presence. There was just a rare presence.
Yeah.
And it's like, and not only that, but they overshadowed their own company. And it's like, wow. It's like, Jesus, God, Rare was so powerful back in the 90s.
Yeah, they really were.
God, Nintendo would be dead without them now. They would have gotten out of the market.
But I do love that you're right. It's like Rare was like their biggest, one of their, they were at competition with themselves.
They were at competition, yeah.
And those that did engage with it often walked away dissatisfied. Botwood, Doak, and Hollis were bummed. The version on display was an outdated, buggy one that didn't do it any justice. That and console gamers were searching for platformers. PC enthusiasts went right to the id section to get their shooter fill.
Yeah.
The accompanying film paraphernalia was baffling to attendees as well. That movie was old news.
I was going to say, I really feel like the fact that the movie, like the 2-year-old movie thing, I also admit if I saw a movie tie-in game 2 years after the movie came out.
Fucking so out of this like today.
The only thing I would do is probably look over it, point it out, laugh at it with you guys, and then leave.
Well, especially if other, like, if sequels came out after. It'd be like if they announced here's a video game based on Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, which was like, they already made one after that and they have a new one coming out. So like, why that one?
Yeah.
But they had remorse for even going through the effort of making an appearance. Valuable resources were being wasted when they could be at their studio hammering down on what was left to do. Focus testing scores were already high. They just needed to get the word out. Thankfully, more and more people would pass through with each afternoon, though they had to get back to work and make this the sensation it was shaping up to be. Within those final months, the box art was printed, manuals and strategy guides written. Ah, shit, I should have had mine out in our interview. But, yeah. And also, these had, like, outdated information in them.
Yeah.
Like,
they did not catch everything before it went gold, that is for sure.
And most importantly, bugs were squished. Any occurrence of a glitch getting found, they'd divvy up the duties to whoever would volunteer to fix them. Doak remembered that there were a half dozen factors where the game might freeze or crash, and those had to get, like...
Yeah. Yes, this was back in the day where launching a buggy game was like...
Couldn't just patch that shit.
Yeah, no. And it's like, you know what else they wouldn't do these days? Give them another $6 to fix bugs. They would just launch it and be like, all right, you'll fix it in post.
Nintendo, progenitors of the official seal of quality, even caught a handful themselves. One of the most infamous was a perspective issue where character models at a distance would scale incorrectly and render at an inappropriate size. Save files had to be assured to function properly.
Oh, yeah.
Main menus were adjusted to subtly introduce you to the crosshair system. Even if mashing A was designed to still get you to the right place, which I think is like, I never thought about that, but it totally is. If you just mash it.
You just mash it. You go literally to the level that you're on at the difficulty you're on. And it actually, not only that, but it immediately jumps to start as well.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Also, like, a proposed music video was thrown out? I wish there was more info out on that.
Oh, dude.
I tried. Oh
my, dude, if that isn't a YouTube video yet.
It had to be in the earliest of stages.
Wow. Okay, yo, ready? If we ever talk to Doak.
Good call.
Okay, and also, it's like, joking about, it's like, you got to make sure the save game works. Tell that to the Ascent. You remember that? It's like,
Yeah.
dude, your characters didn't even save, and then eventually your character got cloned to somebody
Tell
else's.
that to Sony. They made it so that PS4 and PS5 saves are incompatible with one another.
Yeah.
Wow. Really?
That's why
the games
that's
have
so
to convert.
annoying
Games have to convert from a PS4 save file to a PS5 save file.
Smart.
I'm glad I didn't upgrade my Elden Ring then.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, you can.
You have to do it manually.
You'd have to do it manually. The
Yeah.
developer has to encode it in.
And if they don't,
okay.
then
if they
you're,
don't, then you
you're
can't transfer.
Yeah.
Shit.
Around here was when the cheat unlocks were implanted, with the exception of the all bonds and line mode, a graphical overlay that transforms the visuals into a pencil-style look for debugging purposes. Sorry. But these rewards in the form of time trials gave those that had finished the story a rad motivator to go back. They also added more options for multiplayer when obtained. It's brilliant. Button combo codes were still there as a safety measure, except they were primarily for the QA department. Entering them was an obtuse fucking process. You ever try it?
Wait. Oh yeah,
They're long and like.
So actually, I mean, obviously, as kids, we never had the skill to get the all weapons cheat. That is how we got
That's how you did it?
and so that's how as kids we.
I wonder how
got
those
that.
got out there. Like,
Yeah.
they did not broadcast them.
Digging through the code, probably.
I guess, I mean, if people unearthed all the, like, weird mysteries of how to get characters in Mortal Kombat, then they had to pick this apart.
I mean, was it... The only thing I can think of is when they printed the strategy guide, did they put him in there as like
No.
really?
I have that strategy guide. They did not. In the 11th hour, the Aztec and Egyptian temples were created as a means to incentivize you to beat those higher difficulties. This and the fascinating 007 mode, where you could personalize your playstyle by manually tweaking the health damage, accuracy, and reaction time of enemies in the single player. Wow. And 20 missions in total was nuts. Like, really, they were just hoping to fill the 4x5 photo dimensions of the screen, the level screen. But so post a 2 weeks long, quote, lot check where they play the game over and over to death, hatching up last minute hacks to get by without recompiling. But, you know, like, following this, the ROM was sent to Nintendo and GoldenEye 007 was done.
I think didn't the book mention there was one last fix, like literally like right by the deadline, he had to put in one last fix and it got in, and that was the very last thing.
I don't have.
I don't remember what it was, but he said there was one last fix, and it's like it needed to go in, and they fixed it, and then they sent, and that
they
was
were like hitting midnight, like, you know, like the clock.
Oh, that was like the Halo thing, right?
Yeah.
I said that in our episode. The pistol.
And think about how
the damage on the pistol was tuned up literally 3 hours before it was sent to certification.
Is that why?
That's why the Halo 1 pistol is so strong.
In an alternate world, that pistol sucks, and I don't want to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this is going to conclude Act 2 of our trilogy. That was a way better stopping point, I feel. Be sure to join us again in 2 weeks to hear about the epic launch and commendations, along with the strange years after where somehow the story gets even more fucking, like, muddled. A tangled web of who owned what, and then the remakes and remasters. But a thank you to all those that made it this far. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Austin. Shout out again to Elise Noor, of course. Only one more episode in store. But did you want to take care of those plugs?
Plugs. Thank you for listening. I'm still shaking the rust off. Gotta give me a second. Thank you for listening. If you want to hear more, such as the numerous episodes we brought up, including the ESRB one, the Halo one,
PlayStation one,
PlayStation one, you can find all those and more at hotbuttoncast.com. You can also subscribe on all the podcast services. I'm not gonna name them. Hot Button.
You know.
Yeah, and if you want to be tuned in for when our episodes come out, part 3 and the interview with Elise, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at HotButtonCast. I think that's it.
Yeah,
that's it. Cool. Good night, everyone.
Good night.